Chapter 51. Into the Whirlpool, 2. Kale looked out through the small window on the boat. 1. The color of the violent water was not transparent at all. It was white and blue as it reflected the bottom of the sea, and became a darker and darker shade of blue as it got closer to the center of the whirlpool. You'd probably die if you get caught in it. Kale thought about the new magic bombs in the magic box back in his residence. He then turned his gaze toward the front and looked toward the smallest island of the cluster of islands in front of him. Young Master Nim, it is that island over there. The whirlpool in front of that island is the worst. You'll need to say goodbye to this world immediately if you get caught in that one. Ha ha ha. The fisherman was really gutsy. He didn't even see the vice captain's face turn paler as he continued to speak. Kale held back the feeling of needing to vomit and paid attention to the fisherman's words. There is a legend that says that the whirlpool appeared because of a thief who stole something from a god, but, The boat leaned to one side. Kale gulped after seeing the water crash against the boat's window. Agu, the boat almost tipped over. Hey punk, row properly. Sorry dad. The fishing dad and son duo really were gutsy. That is why, young Master Nim. Hey. In the end, Kale raised his hand to stop the old man and sternly started to speak. Let's talk after making it to that island first. That is what Lady Amiru said as well. We are almost there. The old man skillfully started to row. The boat that was moving as he continued to row somehow twisted and turned to avoid all of the whirlpools. Kale observed each and every one of the whirlpools they passed. The marks of the wind vomited out by the sound of the wind. The ancient power called, the sound of the wind, created wind, tops, and spun them as strong as it could. And, as time went on, those tops created new tops, leading to the numerous whirlpools visible today. Why, young master, I'm supposed to be protecting you. Ugh. Kale ignored the vice captain's words as he clenched onto the boat's handles. He did not want to drown to death. Finally, the boat arrived at an island and Kale could once again feel the ground underneath his feet. We have arrived. It was easier than usual. The fisherman's son nodded at his father's words. Kale looked past the two of them to see the vice captain leaning over. Barf. The vice captain was suffering from such severe seasickness that Kale wondered if he may end up dying. Kale tapped Beacrox's arm as Beacrox walked by him and pointed to the vice captain. Beacrox frowned before taking out a pair of white gloves from his pocket and putting them on as he headed over to the vice captain. Kale flinched a bit once he saw the white gloves. Aren't those the gloves that he uses for torture to keep himself clean? Beacrox seemed to have an endless supply of those white gloves. After observing the existence of these white gloves for the first time, Kale stopped looking at Beacrox and the vice captain and looked around the island. There was no sand on this island, instead, it was surrounded by rocks. If you looked a bit farther in from the shoreline, you could see a small forest as well. Well, it is probably more accurate to call it a garden than a forest since they said you should be able to walk all around it in less than an hour. Old man. Yes, young Master Nim. Continue your story from earlier, the one about the thief. The old man stopped watching his son anchor the boat and pointed to the path they took to get here. He was pointing at the large whirlpool in front of this island. A long time ago, there was a thief who was faster than anybody else. The thief's steps were so light and cautious that, supposedly, he could walk on water without causing the smallest of ripples. It really was the sound of the wind. Of course, walking on water was a bit of an exaggeration. Anyways, the thief supposedly stole something that belonged to a god. The legend says that the thief jumped off the cliff of winds with the items. You know which cliff that is, right? That was how the god's item and the thief disappeared from this world, as well as how the whirlpools came to exist. The old man smiled as gently as the tanned wrinkles on his arms. That is why there used to be sacrifices in the past for the god's item. Not anymore. If it really was a god's item, why would that god bother us humans instead of taking back his item? Kale agreed with the old man. It was not a god's item. It was a human's power. That was why a god could not take it. Then I will look around the island now. Yes, sir. I will be waiting for you here. The old man headed toward his son as the vice captain jumped up. Young Master Nim, me too, ugh. He then curled back down. Kale clicked his tongue and motioned for Beacrox to come over. Once Beacrox arrived, Kale whispered in Beacrox's ear. Since you are Ron's son, I'm sure you are also not normal. And Kale patted the not even slightly nervous Beacrox's shoulder and continued to speak. You hold the vice captain here. Will you be okay on your own? What could be dangerous over here? I also have my shield. Please be safe. Beacrox agreed to follow Kale's order without much issue. This was why Kale had brought Beacrox with him. He needed someone around him for the time being, someone who was strong, but did not feel extremely determined to protect him. It also had to be someone he could boss around. That was why Beacrox was perfect. I'll be back soon. Kale headed to the forest at the center of the island. Please shoot your shield up into the air if you are in danger. Young Master Nim, I will be right behind, ugh. Kale just half listened to Beacrox and the vice captain as he walked into the forest. He then quietly spoke as soon as he was away from the others. What do you think? The black dragon answered back. As you mentioned, there is something underneath that whirlpool in front of this island. It was similar to the power from that cave from last time. The black dragon was talking about when Kale earned the vitality of the heart. Kale leisurely entered into the forest. There was no reason to look inside. He really just came here to look at the whirlpool. I do need to know a bit about the terrain, since we will be flying back here at night. Kale asked one more thing. There's nobody here, right? None. There was nobody else other than Kale's group on the island. Kale could finally sigh in relief. He had been worried about the pod of whales from yesterday. But there is a corpse. What? Kale instantly froze up. He started to frown and looked up into the sky. The black dragon removed his invisibility and appeared in front of Kale. When I looked down on this island earlier, there were 3 corpses on the other side of the island. Corpses were completely out of Kale's expectations. Kale took 3 steps back toward the boat. He had a bad feeling that something unlucky would happen if he continued to walk toward the other side of the island. However, the black dragon continued to speak. But the corpses were not human corpses. Kale lifted his hands up to cover his eyes. If it was not human, that meant that they had a distinct feature. However, they also did not resemble animals. So they are similar to humans, but not the same. Then there was only one answer left. Were their hands and feet weird? The black dragon energetically nodded his head. That's right. The hand and feet were weird. They looked like fins. Fins. That was the symbol of the mermaids. A pod of whales and mermaids. Kale was worried and full of doubt. The whales and mermaids were not supposed to show up just yet. No. Kale quickly fixed his train of thought. The battle between the whale tribe and the mermaids had a history that was even longer than the oldest human wars. However, the moment when this was revealed in the novel was when Choi Han became involved with the whale tribe. Kale called toward the black dragon. Hey, you. Do not call me you. Then what should I call you? You will soon find out. What the hell is he talking about? Kale just thought that the black dragon who had been studying the human language lately would pick a name for himself, so he simply pointed toward the other side of the island with his chin. Are you sure there is nobody there? There are no living presence. It is the same in the water. Then lead the way. He had to go check out the mermaid corpses. Just to verify and keep himself out of danger. You have to be in front of me. Kale pushed the black dragon in front of him as they headed toward the other side of the island. He then started to frown as soon as he came out of the other side of the forest and saw the corpses. I was right. As expected, they were mermaid corpses. To be specific, there were 3 corpses, all with their necks broken. Furthermore, their legs and arms were twisted as well. Kale frowned even more after seeing the appearance of the mermaids with his own eyes instead of just as text in a novel. The corpses were completely dry, as if they were mummies. However, the mermaids really did look different from humans. There were fins on their hands and feet, while their skin seemed to be covered in scales. They also had gills instead of ears. Why are you not getting closer? The black dragon curiously asked Kale, who was observing from a distance. Kale easily answered back to the black dragon. It's scary. Right. I forgot that you are a weak human. The black dragon nodded and headed toward the mermaid corpses. He then started to mumble to himself. It seems like they were flattened to death. They also seem to have died not too long ago. Furthermore, I can see some red blood underneath their fins. I think they were in a battle. It was a whale. A whale definitely killed these mermaids. The whale tribe had a small population, similar to the dragons, but they were the strongest existence in the ocean. That was how they were able to protect the ocean world from the mermaids. The mermaids wanted to create a kingdom inside the ocean. However, the whale tribe did not accept sharing their territory with others. It was because they were a species that needed to migrate along with the weather. 2. The whale tribe is small in number, but they are too strong for the mermaids to do as they please. However, the mermaids suddenly started to get stronger. The mermaids started to get stronger, putting the whale tribe in a difficult situation. That was when Choi Han appeared and assisted the whales. At least, that was the contents of the novel by the end of Volume 5. Kale told the black dragon that they should head back and turned away from the mermaid corpses. Can we just leave them like this? Yes. A mermaid corpse will not dissipate on land, instead, it will just dry out almost entirely. In order for it to dissipate, it needs to be underwater. Once that happens, the smell is spread throughout the ocean, signaling other mermaids to come to get the corpses. That was why the whale tribe left them on land like this on purpose. I need to quickly take care of things and leave too. There was probably only one member of the whale tribe who fought these mermaids. If there were two of them, they wouldn't have left these corpses on land. They would have thrown them into the water in order to draw even more mermaids over and battle it out. They chose to act like this because they were alone. Kale headed back to the boat and talked to the others. Let's go back. There's not much to see. The vice captain, who was finally starting to recover from his seasickness, turned pale again, but Beacroc seemed to have bought a lot of fish from the fisherman, as he happily responded. Young Master Kale, we will have roasted fish for dinner. Sounds good. After returning to the residence, Kale was waiting for the time to pass with a stomach full of roasted fish. Once darkness finally descended on the small village, he took out some scuba gear from the magic box he got from Billows. Kale stood on the window sill facing the cliff of winds and the northeastern sea as he started to talk to An and Hong. Keep a good watch at home. We won't let anybody in. Have a safe trip. Kale just nodded his head to respond to the baby kittens before looking toward the black dragon. The black dragon looked toward Kale with confidence and casually called out a spell. Flight. At that moment, Kale's body floated up into the air. Let's go. The black dragon took the lead and Kale followed behind him. Kale was carrying a magic bomb as they flew high in the air in order to avoid getting noticed. Kale's plan today was to hit the whirlpool accurately before running. By the time people came out in shock, Kale would have already disappeared like the soundless wind. This black dragon's version of the magic bomb was scheduled to go off 10 minutes later. Chapter 52. Into the Whirlpool, 3. It looks even worse at night. Kale looked down at the largest whirlpool underneath him and commented. He then started to think. Tunka really is a crazy bastard. How did Tunka end up getting the sound of the wind in the novel? He was shipwrecked and arrived on this island, and then starts to show interest in this whirlpool when his condition got a bit better. Volcanoes, glaciers, desert, this bastard who liked to crash against the elements with just his body could not help but be interested in this ocean whirlpool. Tunka enjoyed dangerous situations. No, he was obsessed with them. That was why Kale was calling him a crazy bastard. Tunka said that before jumping into that whirlpool without any preparations. Naturally, Kale had no plans to act the same way. Kale had already packed everything he needed in the scuba gear's pockets. Is it here? Kale nodded to answer the black dragon's question and looked around. Maybe it was because it was a country village, but the entire village was dark at night. The ocean was even darker. But it was much louder than the village from the sound of the whirlpool. The fact that it will get louder will not draw any attention. They will just think it is the whirlpool being weird and forget about it. Kale turned away from the ocean and looked toward the cliff of winds. I didn't expect such a good thing to be here. It was a fateful encounter that Tunka had never even expected. Kale put aside the information from the novel and spoke to the black dragon. Let's start. Alright, human. Black mana started to come out of the black dragon's short front paw. Boom. The magic bomb reacted to the mana and started to vibrate. The magic bomb in Kale's arms was not the magic bomb used by the secret organization in volumes 1 and 2 of the novel. It is a much better magic bomb. Around the second half of volume 3, the mages of the Whipper Kingdom who were pushed to the brink start to develop new tools to fight against the non-mages. One of those tools was similar to the magic bomb in Kale's hand. The condensed mana, which is the main ingredient of the magic bomb, reacts to the developer's mana and divides into multiple smaller mana balls before exploding. It wasn't as strong, but the chain of explosions was useful to kill even more enemies. Kale complimented the black dragon. You must be amazing to create such a thing. Yes. I am a great and mighty dragon. Even more black mana flowed out of those short paws and disappeared into the bombs. Ooh. Kale could feel the magic bombs vibrating in his arms. Kale was aiming for the moment when the moon set, but the sun would not have risen. Be careful, do not get hurt. The black dragon headed higher into the air as he put a shield around Kale and said bye. Click. A small noise sounded from inside the magic bomb. Kale released the bomb from his hand and then put on the scuba mask. It was a magic tool that will allow him to breathe underwater for 5 minutes. A few moments later. Boom. 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 The bomb went off and Kale summoned the silver shield before falling straight down. The night wind rushed fiercely past his face. Once the tens of smaller explosions went off, the whirlpool lost its strength and could no longer spin properly. Kale opened up the wings of the shield. Splayawash. The shield clashed with the ocean as Kale dove underwater. He put on some goggles and headed to the bottom of the ocean. Thanks to the shield, Kale's body was quickly sinking like an arrow. Boom, boom. Even more explosions were going off and making the whirlpool lose even more strength. The waves created from the explosions touched Kale's shield and silver wings, but Kale still managed to safely arrive at the bottom of the ocean. Boom. Kale used the shield once more to easily handle the last explosion before starting to walk on the ocean floor. The small central island and the large whirlpool in front of it. That whirlpool was caused by a small top that was underneath a large boulder. This top had continued to spin for hundreds of years without stopping. Kale could see that large boulder in front of him. It was so large that Kale thought it could easily crush a person. Kale looked toward the boulder and started to think. Tunka, you crazy bastard. You destroyed this thing. Kale shook his head underneath the water and headed toward the top that resembled Sun Wukong underneath the boulder. 1. At that moment, just like every other time when he had gained an ancient power, the former owner's voice appeared. You sons of bitches. Oh. This owner was quite the potty mouth. Why is it a sin to steal something that they sacrificed people to create? Especially when I was just going to return it to the people. You trash bastards. Why do bastards like you have such power? The owner of the Sound of the Wind was that same thief that was said to have stolen something from a god. She had not stolen a god's item. In reality, she had just stolen something from a temple. She had suffocated after becoming trapped underneath this large boulder. The silent thief with the quickest feet met her demise like this. This superpower to control the wind was different than mana. She herself was the wind. After her death, she had become a top to continue vomiting out whirlpools. This stupid water. If my friend's light was here, it will burn it all. Kale's expression turned odd as he was taking out the items to free this top. Light. Is it perhaps? Do you know why lightning is so scary? It is because all it takes is a single streak, just one streak. Kale started to think about the last ancient power on his list, the fire of destruction. He had to pass through fire to get to it and had to have a ton of money with him as well. A sudden thought crossed through Kale's mind. The indestructible shield, wood. Vitality of the heart, wind. Sound of the wind, water. Fire of destruction, fire. Kale was having a bad feeling about this. He even debated whether or not he really should take this power. However. Beep, beep, beep. The alarm inside the scuba gear was informing him that he only had 3 minutes left. Kale decided to think about this later. Let's hurry and take it out. He started to dig with a hoe. He was trying to get rid of this obstacle that was holding both the large boulder and the top. This hoe that was reinforced with magic was so sharp that the floor easily gave way. There's no reason to be an idiot like Tunka and destroy the boulder. He just had to dig. Kale started to smirk. He could finally see the entire top after digging a bit longer. Kale reached toward the top and grabbed it with his hand. Sweeyish. Kale moved a couple steps back with the top spinning in his hand. Boom. The boulder that had been in perfect balance with the top started to lean to one side. If it was a sin that I stole it, why do they claim to not be sinners when they lied to the humans? This world is rotten. It is a rotten world where those in power can do whatever the fuck they want. The world has always been rotten. Kale ignored the thief's rant and put the top down on the ground. There was only one thing the owner of the Sound of the Wind wanted. Freedom. The only way to provide that was to destroy the top. Crack. The top broke into pieces under Kale's foot. A sharp noise like a screech echoed under the water as the top broke. The wind that poured out of the broken top started to surround Kale. You have the power of recovery. Don't get caught like I did. Got it. The power of recovery. Is she talking about the vitality of the heart? Kale started to frown as the thief said her final words. Be free. Swoosh. A white wind surrounded Kale's body and moved up to his head before starting to move down. It would do this until it reached his feet and then stop there. But the wind instead roamed around his heart. Boom. 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 Kale's heart suddenly started to beat wildly. Ugh. The heart was beating so much that it hurt. Kale patted his heart with his right hand as air bubbles came out of his mouth that was open because of the pain. What is going on? Ugh. Kale held back another moan and curled up his body. At that moment, the wind flashed before instantly moving down to his feet and drawing an image on his ankle. Kale could see the image of a whirlpool in the gap between the scuba suit and the scuba shoes. This whirlpool was also silver in color. Once the whirlpool image was completed, Kale could finally feel his heart calming down. Did the vitality of the heart strengthen the sound of the wind as well? He was curious but did not have any time to think about it. Beep, beep, the alarm rang once again to let him know that not much time was left. However, he still had plenty of time. Kale activated the sound of the wind and a gust of wind started to swirl around his feet. Kale lightly moved one foot forward. Swai-i-i-ith. Kale's body instantly cut through the water. Although the large whirlpool in front of the central island was gone, the other whirlpools were still existent. However, Kale easily moved past them without any issue. The other whirlpools will disappear within a week. However, Kale was planning on maintaining those whirlpools for about a year. The whirlpools recognized the sound of the wind, the symbol of their owner, and made way for Kale. His destination was the Cliff of Winds. Kale watched the cliff quickly get closer and kicked off the ground before he got too close. His body shot upward in reaction. Swai-ish. The ocean breeze welcomed Kale as he came back above water. Kale quickly took off the scuba mask and threw it aside. Beep, the alarm went off to sound that 5 minutes were up. Kale looked toward the village and saw that quite a lot of lights were starting to turn on. I need to hurry. Hans probably wouldn't come to wake him up because he said to not bother him unless it was a matter of life or death, but it was still better to return quickly. Kale swam toward the Cliff of Winds and noticed large and small boulders underneath the cliff. These boulders were the reason that anybody who fell off the cliff to their death ended up with mauled-up corpses. Kale looked to find the boulder that resembled the head of a lion. It was easy to find because it was the largest boulder in the area. Kale then started to smile after seeing the small cave behind the boulder. Found it. Tunka had a fateful encounter in this cave after earning the sound of the wind. It was something useless for Tunka, but it was an ingredient that Kale would put to good use in the future. If this ingredient was combined with the ingredient that Locke will acquire for Kale in the future, the Queen of the Jungle will have no choice but to make a deal with Kale. The Queen needs to save the jungle. Kale carefully swam past the boulders and entered the cave. The cave entrance was dark because the moon had already set, but it did not matter. Kale entered the cave and quickly jumped out of the water. He then looked up at the sky outside. It's about time he arrived. The black dragon immediately started to speak as if he read Kale's mind. However, the black dragon was speaking inside Kale's mind. Weak human, you are not hurt. There was only one reason for the black dragon to talk inside Kale's head. Kale started to get the chills. He slowly turned his head toward the inside of the cave. The black dragon only spoke into Kale's head when there was someone unfamiliar nearby. There is a life form inside this cave. Although it is almost dead, thankfully, it is not a corpse that you fear. PSSSSSSSS, PSSSSSSSS. Kale could hear something dragging inside the cave and started to contemplate his choices. Jump back into the water. Or ask the dragon to take me home right now. PSSSSSSSS, PSSSSSSS, PSSSS. But that dragging noise became more urgent and the life form revealed itself before Kale could make up his mind. Kale put one foot back into the water. The life form that revealed itself started to speak in a shaking voice. Please save me. Ah. A gasp came out of Kale's mouth. The life form had a salty smell to it. It was the smell of the sea. No way. There is something I must accomplish. I cannot die here. Leave die alone. A human-looking existence with its horrendously scratched-up leg dragging approached Kale. There was a green fluid on the scratches that made the existence continue to vomit up blood. That was clearly the work of a mermaid. Please. It was a whale. This beautiful human with messy hair that was crawling toward Kale with his hands was a whale. Weak human, did you catch a cold? Your face is pale. The black dragon was talking into Kale's mind, but Kale could not hear it. Kale felt like he was facing a scene straight out of a horror movie. An injured, almost dead member of the whale tribe had revealed himself to Kale. Chapter 53. Currently thinking. 1. Kale started to think. Should I run? But that whale's pupils were accurately looking at him. He also seemed to be putting strength into his hands, as Kale could see the whale's fingers digging into the ground. His strength was unbelievable even though he seemed to be close to death. He had a single question on his mind. A whale tribe member being hurt by mermaid poison. An answer quickly floated across Kale's mind. Mixed blood. That was the only possible answer. Kale quickly thought through the contents of The Birth of a Hero. There were no mixed blood characters in the whale tribe that was almost as low in number as the dragons. But there was one that died. Kale started to frown and worry. Ugh. The whale could not crawl anymore. His body started to shake without being able to do anything else. At that moment, Kale heard the black dragon's voice in his head. Human, are you not going to help? The black dragon doubtingly asked. Kale did not answer the question and stood up. He hated useless feelings and reaching out a helping hand for no reason. However. Hey. Kale approached the mixed blood whale and crouched in front of him. The whale human who was shaking on the ground slowly lifted his head. This long-haired man really lived up to the stories about how the whales were so beautiful that they made elves look like squids. Such a beautiful man was looking at Kale. Save dash. Kale answered without any sort of emotion in his voice. Yes. I'll save you. A mixed blood whale human. Kale knew that it might be more painful for this whale to be alive than to die in the next few moments. He was sure that the whale knew this to be true as well. 1. Kale recalled the conversation the Whale King had with Locke in the novel. Why do you say that? My child is not of pure blood. Nuna is not a pure-blooded whale. Not that child. I had a son who was mixed blood. That was why he had a lot of difficulties. He was too weak to live in the ocean. Then does he live on land? No. That terrible son of mine left this world before me. The whale tribe's king and mediator of the ocean was someone with blue hair and blue eyes. Although Kale could not tell for sure because it was dark, the face of the whale looking at him right now was slightly similar to the face of the Whale King as described in the novel. Kale looked toward the sea-like blue eyes and started to speak. Sleep for a bit. Everything will be fine when you wake back up. The blue eyes blinked a couple of times before slowly closing. Kale watched the unconscious mixed-blood whale for a bit, before approaching and inspecting his legs. What do you think? The black dragon revealed itself once the mixed-blood whale became unconscious and quickly approached the whale. He then created a small light ball with magic so that they could take a better look at the leg. It is a mess. The whale tribe's skin is very thick and tough. Although their skin looked flawless and beautiful, it was also extremely tough. Sadly, this mixed-blood whale did not have such a luxury. That was why it was impacted by a mermaid's attack and poisoned. The black dragon watched Kale with an odd expression on its face as Kale inspected the whale. You are a very weird human. You are so weak and weird. Enough nonsense. Kale pointed to the whale and ordered the black dragon. Dunk him in the water. Did you lie to him? The black dragon seemed completely shocked. The shocked expression of this reptile looked pretty serious. Human, you said you were going to save him. You are weak, but you have kept all of your promises until now. So why are you telling me to dunk him in the water? Are you trying to make him suffocate to death? Sigh. Kale let out a deep sigh. He then grabbed that light ball that was floating in the air. It was not hot. I'm doing it to save him. He then added on. After you put him in the water, you remember the corpses from earlier, right? Just what are you trying to make me do? Nothing much. Just go and bring me back one arm. The black dragon's jaws dropped. Kale did not care about this and headed into the cave. It was because the black dragon didn't say no, even though it looked completely shocked. I will do as you asked for now. The black dragon really was obedient. Kale did not look back and continued to walk forward. He needed to take care of it and return back before the village became rowdy. The cave was not deep, and Kale reached the end quickly. Found it. The fateful encounter that Tunka had found was a small puddle. Kale took out one of the items he brought with him. It was an alarm device. It would let Kale know if someone else got close to this location. I just need to take it with me before I leave. Kale scooped a bit of that puddle into a small glass bottle. Fire-suppressing water. Water is always strong against fire, but the strength of this water was a bit different. If Kale dunked the item Locke will procure for him into this water, it will give birth to a very precious item. It will become a treasure that will save the drying jungle. Kale returned back to the cave entrance. The black dragon seemed to have already returned with the arm, as he handed the arm to Kale with an iffy expression. Kale could also see the drenched mixed-blood whale boy as well. Let's go. The black dragon sighed before levitating the mixed-blood whale, the mermaid arm, and Kale before floating back home. Kale received an overwhelming welcome from An and Hong as soon as he returned. You came at the right time. The butler has been banging on the door for a while. Kale could tell even without the kittens telling him. He could hear Hans's voice outside the door. Hans sounded like he was ready to cry. Young master, I dare not enter because you said you'll kill me if you wake you up. That is why I can only continue to bang on the door. Can you please open the door, young master? Kale took off the scuba suit and threw it to a corner before taking a device out of the magic box and throwing it toward the black dragon. He then put on a bathrobe and opened the door. Young master, young lady Amiru asked me to verify that you were safe. So please wake up and open dash. What do you want? Oh. Young master. Were you washing? Kale swept back his wet hair and leisurely answered Hans's question. I couldn't sleep, so I was sitting in the seawater bath. Ah, you were in the bathroom. Then I shouldn't have to worry about my life, since you were not sleeping. I wonder. I'm sorry, young Master Nim. Ahem, hem. Hans let out some fake coughs before inspecting Kale and starting to speak. Are you hurt anywhere? It is quite a mess outside right now. There were a few loud explosions earlier. I believe something has happened out at sea. Kale looked out the window he entered through. The village was completely lit now, even though it was the middle of the night. He could also see some lights heading out to sea. Amiru seemed to have made a brave decision to send people out at sea, even with the dangers of the whirlpools, because the development was right around the corner. There was a loud noise, but they haven't determined what caused it. Young Lady Amiru said people will be heading out to sea. I believe it will be figured out soon enough. In Kale's opinion, Amira was going to be happy because the whirlpool by the central island had disappeared. That alone would increase the value of this shoreline exponentially. Is that so? Yes, sir. Then you can leave now. Hans respectfully bowed to Kale before quickly heading out. At the same time, the black dragon turned off the invisibility device, revealing himself and the unconscious mixed-blood whale, along with the mermaid arm on top of him. An and Hong did not move from the corner of the room after seeing the mermaid arm. These kittens were scared of a lot of stupid things. Kale headed to the bathroom and scooped up some of the sea water from the bath. The black dragon watched with curiosity as Kale dunked one side of the mermaid arm into the sea water. Sizzle. A burning noise could be heard, but, in reality, the dried-up arm was quickly returning to normal. The corpse's swift change made An and Hong run and hide underneath the bed. The corpse arm returned completely back to normal in another moment. Kale looked toward the whale human's leg. Unlike earlier, the green fluid was mixed with the sea water. Kale took out a knife. At that moment, the unconscious man's eyelids started to flutter and his body started to twitch. It looks like he's going to wake up. Human, put the knife away. The black dragon shouted and the man opened his eyes. The first thing the men saw was Kale lifting the knife up over his head. Kale smiled toward the whale human in order to tell him to relax once they made eye contact. The whale human's eyes started to shake as the knife moved. Stab. The knife stabbed into the mermaid arm and cut through the skin. A fluid started to pour out of the cut arm. It was the mermaid's blood. Once the arm returned to normal, the blood was restored as well. Kale started to speak to the still shaking man. Good. The blood poured out and fell onto the man's leg. Sizzle. The green fluid on the man's leg started to sizzle once it came into contact with the mermaid blood. Kale handed the bleeding arm to the man. Drink it before the blood dries up. That is the best way. Volume 5. This was the healing method Rosalind discovered to heal Locke, who was injured after getting in a fight with a mermaid. It was a method that was still not known in this world. The eyes of this man, who seemed to be in his early 20s, started to shake again. It was the same for An, Hong, and the black dragon as well. In the end, the man got better. He had chosen to drink the blood after seeing that the dripped blood from earlier was indeed slowly curing his leg. Kale continued to speak while looking at the confused expression on the mixed-blood whale's face. What? Aren't you the one who killed this mermaid? The man's expression stiffened up. Kale started to scoff after seeing that expression. It was weird to see the whale being so anxious after being asked if he had killed a mermaid. Kale then poured the remaining blood back onto the whale human's leg, before putting the arm back into the water. The arm started to dissipate inside the water as Kale watched. Kale continued to look at the arm dissipate as he started to speak to the whale human. If you're a whale, you probably need to return to the ocean by morning in order to recover completely. Get some sleep and return on your own. The man's face turned cold. It was a different type of viciousness than Choi Han. This was someone who was always looked down upon, someone who was always reminded he was not as good as the rest of his tribe members. This was a viciousness that could only come from such a person. How did you know I was a whale? Who else could kill 3 mermaids? I need to return home. Kale felt like he would end up having to listen to a useless story, so he quickly waved his hand. I have no desire to hear your useless story. That was why Kale did not ask for the whale's name nor let Han see the whale. I only saved you because I said I would when you asked me to save you. Kale laid down on the bed. He needed to take a shower, but he was too tired for that right now. I'm going to sleep. Be quiet on your way out. Kale closed his eyes. There was nothing he needed to worry about since the dragon was there. He then remembered the last words the Whale King had said to Locke in the novel. This was why Kim Rock-soo chose to take action this time. He had experienced losing all of his family members himself. Of course, he had no plans on suffering a loss from this experience. I do think Nuna would do well as queen. But since Nuna is an affectionate person too, wouldn't she want to live with you too, mister? Of course. She searched the entire ocean when my son disappeared. I'm sure the entire ocean would have been flipped over if Nuna was the one doing the searching. Hey mister, what was your son's name? My son's name was Paston. The savior of the king's son. Whether it is the current whale king or the future whale queen, wouldn't he be able to use this to his advantage? But, most importantly, the whale tribe had to win the war against the mermaids. Kale fell asleep with a calm mind. When he woke up the next morning, Paston was already gone. The red kitten Han reported to him. He said he'll be back at night. There really is no reason for him to do dash dot. Kale just shrugged his shoulders without finishing the sentence. However, a moment later, an even bigger feeling of, was this really necessary, filled his mind. Young Master Kale. I'm sorry for coming over so early, but I needed to share some amazing news with you. Young Lady Amiru was smiling brightly. It was rare to see the usually calm Amiru this way. She seemed to have come straight from the sea, as she still had a raincoat on and other people were with her. Do you know what it is? I have no idea. Compared to the excited Amiru, Kale was calm. No, he was almost emotionless. The whirlpool in front of the central island has disappeared. It disappeared overnight without even a trace. I made that happen. Kale could not tell her he had done that, so he just looked away. Next to Amiru was the veteran fisherman and some knights, as well as Tunka. As described in the novel, Tunka had long brown hair like a lion's mane. This man with a dangerous appearance that seemed like he could and would easily send an orc flying with a single slap, clicked his tongue and started to mumble. How disappointing. I wanted to try jumping into that whirlpool. Should I jump into a different one instead? He definitely was a crazy bastard. At that moment, Amiru started to talk excitedly to Kale once again. Young Master Kale. In return for the Henitus family's investment, I want to show you the site of a peaceful RC. Will you go to the central island with me? Kale needed to show some sincerity in this project until someone arrived from the Henitus territory. Kale smiled gently at Amiru and asked. Is everybody here going over? Yes. The corner of Kale's lips shook at Amiru's short answer. Amiru, who did not see that and only saw the gentle smile, pointed to Tunka and continued to speak. Ah, this is your first time seeing this person, right? This is the person who was almost caught up in the whirlpool. Mr. Bob, this is young Master Kale Henitus. Bob. Kale had an odd expression on his face. Tunka put a smile on that scary-looking mug of his. It was even scarier than seeing an ogre smile. Nice to meet you. My name is Bob. Bob. Tunka really used a fitting name for an alias. It was as stupid as him. Chapter 54. Currently thinking, 2. Kale did not want to see Tunka's smiling face. However, Amiru calmly started to explain. Bob is from the Whipper Kingdom. He is from a small seaside village and went out to fish when somehow he ended up shipwrecked. That is correct. I just live a simple life fishing by the village. Ha 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 ha. I do not know how I ended up like this. A simple life, my ass. It was unbelievable. Amiru did not know about Kale's thoughts, as she continued to speak. That was why he got on a boat and helped us investigate what happened last night. Amiru's eyes were clear as she looked at Tunka. However, when Kale looked around, there were many negative gazes toward Tunka as well. A villager from the Whipper Kingdom. Their gazes showed their true feelings about this barbarian. Kale took a quick glance around before making eye contact with Tunka. Tunka started to smile. I heard that young Master Nim launched a large shield in the capital in order to save everyone. I asked the young lady Nim to bring me with her because I heard that you were a strong person. Tunka's eyes sharpened at that moment. Kale suddenly had an ominous feeling. This is getting dangerous. That was why he immediately responded with the following. That is why I am currently in recovery. Recovery. Yes. It is not a strong power. It is very weak. Amiru added on. Yes. Young Master Kale overused his power to save everyone. That is why he is touring our territory while he recovers. Amiru was looking toward Kale with sympathy, admiration, and some other emotions, but Tunka was different. Ah, is that the case? He seemed to have lost all interest. He then looked at Kale from head to toe before looking away. Good. That is how Tunka should act. Sacrifice for others. A hero. Tunka was not interested in anything like that. All he cared about and obsessed over was strength. He was the type of person who ignored the people on his own side if they were weak, and even killed them if necessary. That was why he was called a tyrant. Then shall we go? Kale nodded at Amiru's question. He could then hear Tunka's mumbling from the side. This is weird. I smell a strong person nearby. He really was crazy. Kale looked up at the empty ceiling. I do not smell. Kale could hear the invisible black dragon's voice in his head. Tunka's instincts were even stronger than those of the beast people. Kale made up his mind that he had to act the weakest he had ever been while he was around Tunka today. We are currently investigating why the whirlpool may have suddenly disappeared. My father and our territory's mages will all soon arrive as well. Kale looked out at the calm sea by the central island and played along with Amiru. Is that so? I'm glad. I hope we can quickly figure out what happened. You are such a good liar. Kale ignored the black dragon's remark as he looked out to the sea with a calm gaze. It was quite chaotic. All of the village's fishermen were out here, as well as the people who came out for the construction of the naval base. They were all looking around and discussing with each other. It was even louder because of the other whirlpools that were still going strong nearby. Kale looked out at all of this and added on. I hope all of the other whirlpools can quickly disappear as well. Human, you are lying again. Didn't you say you will make the whirlpool stay for another year? Kale once again ignored the black dragon's remarks. Amiru nodded at Kale's words with a determined expression. Yes. We will definitely figure out what happened and get rid of the other whirlpools as well. With such an opportunity in front of our eyes and many people helping us, we need to grasp this opportunity completely. The passionate Amiru made Kale feel a bit sorry for her and he started to speak. I'm sure you and the Abar family will definitely accomplish it, young lady Amiru. Thank you. I feel much better after your affirming words, young Master Kale. Amiru's warm gaze headed toward Kale as she stood there with a calm smile on her face. Kale responded back to her with a serious expression. I'm getting a bit dizzy from all this sunlight, may I go rest for a bit underneath the shade? Kale could feel Tunka's gaze on him from one of the boats. Tunka kept on glancing over toward Kale every so often. He seemed to be still looking for the source of that strong person's scent. However, there was no way that Tunka would find the black dragon. That was the limit of someone who could not feel any aura or mana. Ah, of course. Please rest well, since you are still in recovery. Do not overdo it. Thank you. Kale leisurely headed to the central island's forest. Amiru just quietly watched him as he headed toward the shade. This Kale, who was still doing what he was supposed to even when he was in recovery, was definitely different from the Kale of the past. Although he claimed to be ill, he did not look ill at all. He just seemed to be tired. That is what makes him amazing. As someone who dreamt of presiding over this territory in the future, Amiru thought that she needed to become more dependable like Kale. Passion filled her calm gaze as she quickly walked over to the investigators to help. On the other hand, Kale was heading to the other side of the island. Since nobody was over there, it would be a great place to waste time. Aren't you afraid of the corpses over there? You are both weak and a coward. Kale ignored the black dragon once more as he arrived at the other side of the island. He then stopped moving after taking a look. What the? It was not me. I didn't do it. The black dragon was passionately denying any blame. However, this time, Kale did not have the luxury of listening to the black dragon. He quickly rushed toward the boulder that the mermaid corpses were on the other day. He could not help but stop once he got around it. Did Paston do this? The boulder was destroyed into pieces. How did the mermaid corpses end up like this? The mermaid corpses were turned into dust. Kale could tell these were the corpses only because he had seen them here the other day. Anybody else would just think that it was part of the boulder. This immense strength. This was definitely the work of a whale. An extremely angry whale. Splash. Splash. Suddenly, the water started to churn. The black dragon started to speak. Something is shooting up from the bottom of the sea. It is moving very fast. Kale lifted his head and looked toward the sea. He then flinched and stepped backwards. Splayawash. Something large rose to the surface. It was a life form that was dark gray in color. It then looked straight toward Kale. It was a whale. A humpback whale beast person. Humpback whale beast people were known as the guardians of the ocean and protected the weaker life forms. For generations, the whale tribe's king has been a humpback whale beast person. Boom. 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 Kale's heart was going wild. The whale's gaze was filled with both murderous intent and observation, a mix of instinct and rationality. This was the first time Kale had made such direct eye contact with a strong existence that was angry at him. This strong existence was looking down at Kale and inspecting each and every aspect of Kale. It was at that moment. That stupid whale must be crazy. The black dragon's angry voice rang inside Kale's mind. At the same time, a strong power started to cause vibrations in the air. The eyes of the whale, that had been focused on Kale, turned toward the source of the vibration. How dare you look at my weak human like that? The mana in the air started to fluctuate and the water started to go wild. However, the humpback whale did not move at all. Instead, this 15 long whale raised its tail and slapped down onto the water. Spayawas. The water was churning rapidly. This action made Kale certain that this was a beast person. Boom. Boom. Kale calmed his heart, as the vitality of the heart had noticed danger and started to pour out its strength. The indestructible shield also shot out as well. The ancient powers always put their owners' lives first. They were ready to go at any point to protect their owners. Kale turned his head toward the empty void where the mana was gathering and was about to speak. However, another voice started to speak first. I am not trying to fight with you. It was a voice that was as beautiful as the sirens of the Greek mythology. Kale turned his head and saw the humpback whale completely reveal its head above water. Wow! A gasp came out of Kale's mouth. It was very large and scary. He felt like that whale's head could easily kill him with a light tap. Why are you lifting up your stupid head? You're telling me everything you did until now wasn't asking for a fight. Puny whale. Kale let out a sigh at the black dragon's words before reaching out toward the mana. An angry 4-year-old could be quite dangerous. The mana, that seemed ready to destroy anything and everything, gave way to Kale's hand. The whale seemed to be shocked at this development. Kale's head finally reached something round. It was the dragon's head. Kale just stoically patted it a few times. Don't get angry. You will get hurt. The mana started to quickly disappear. Kale then heard a quiet voice. I will not get hurt. I am strong. I know. But you still have to be careful. It was hard to calm down a 4-year-old child. However, the black dragon seemed to have understood what Kale was trying to say. You should be the one being careful, weak human. The mana disappeared completely. Kale turned away and looked toward the whale once the mana was gone. The whale slowly lowered its large head toward Kale. Kale flinched at the size of the head, but managed to stand still. It was because the murderous intent had disappeared from the whale's gaze. Once the humpback whale lowered its head to right in front of Kale, it started to speak. I have something to ask. At that moment, a small whale was swimming like crazy from the far horizon. It was heading toward them. It seemed to be very weak and small compared to this 15 whale. That whale quickly approached them and started to shout. Nuna, you cannot bite him and kill him. The humpback whale in front of Kale quickly turned around. Splayaways. The sea water splashed from the whale's movement and drenched Kale. However, Kale did not have time to think about this. He closed his eyes. This really must be that humpback whale. The tiny whale coming toward them was most likely Paston. That meant that there was only one existence that he would call Nuna. The current whale king's daughter and the future queen of the whales. The whale that was at the vanguard alongside Choi Han and crew in the battle against the mermaids. Kale could see the X-shaped scar on the humpback whale's back. Witira. It was definitely her. The large whale's face started to turn into a frown. Kale slowly started to move backwards, as he did not want to get involved in this humpback whale sibling reunion. The small whale shouted once more. He is someone you must absolutely not kill. The black dragon confusedly spoke into Kale's mind again. What is that small whale talking about? We are not fighting. Kale felt the same way. Kale was thankful that everybody was too focused on the situation on the other side of the island to hear this small whale's voice. Otherwise, everyone would have come here after hearing the small whale's shouts. It was not long before the whales would meet. However, the black dragon casually added on at that time. By the way, just so you know, there is one more coming. What? One more. Kale stopped walking backwards and turned toward the forest. Mew ha 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 ha. I smell it, I can smell it. A crazy bastard whose brown hair looked like a wild lion's mane appeared. It was Tunka. His eyes looked crazy. He was rushing out of the forest while shouting. I smell someone strong. Kale crouched down as soon as he saw Tunka. Thanks to that, Tunka and the humpback whale made direct eye contact with each other. Kale crawled out of the way before the shrimp could get hurt. 1. Chapter 55. Currently thinking, 3. Tunka, who had a crazed look in his eyes, was holding a baseball bat in his hand that was making a vicious noise as it cut through the air. Kale had no idea where he had gotten such a thing. Is it you? Tunka licked his lips before approaching the humpback whale. Even the close to 2 m tall Tunka looked tiny in front of the whale. Hee, this is my first time fighting a whale. Tunka didn't seem to know that this whale was a beast person. He just wanted to fight it because it seemed to be strong. All that filled his head was strength and fighting. That was why the humpback whale looked down at Tunka with disdain. Kale just continued to crouch in a corner as he watched them. What are you doing? The black dragon's extremely curious question rang inside Kale's head, but Kale had moved back to a safe distance before crouching down. A shrimp gets hurt when whales fight. Kale, who was weaker than a shrimp, did not want to get hurt by their fight. Can you just beat a whale to death? Tunka's eyes started to sparkle. He then lightly kicked the ground with his foot. Once he did that, his body instantly shot up into the air. Wow. Kale watched in admiration before stepping even further back. Tunka's bat started to swing toward the humpback whale. It was then that Kale could see how a whale sneers. One corner of the humpback whale's lips went up as the whale started to move. The 15 m long large body instantly twisted before the large tail smacked down toward Tunka. However, Tunka managed to change direction in the air before safely landing back down. Boom. The boulder that Tunka jumped up from was destroyed by the whale's tail. Splayaawawaka. A large wave was created from the whale's attack, and it drenched Kale, along with the rest of the shoreline. Damn it. I look like a rat that is drenched by rain. However, Kale kept his mouth shut. The impact of the destroyed boulder and the crazed Tunka were too great. Mew ha 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 ha. Great, just great. Come on. Tunka was jumping up and down for the whale to attack again. Tunka rushed quickly toward the whale's tail and swung his bat down once again. Instead of avoiding the attack, the whale just raised its tail to attack Tunka. Boom. It was not a noise that would be made when a human made contact with a whale. Boom. With a large noise, Tunka came back down to the ground. The bat in his hands had disintegrated into dust. I knew I shouldn't have used something like a bat. Fighting is best when you use your fists. Ha ha ha. Kale started to think as he watched this lunatic continue to fight. Everybody is going to come here at this rate. Kale thought that people probably already knew something was going on. What could he do about it? What could he do to slip away quietly? Kale didn't care whether the two of them fought or not. It was at that moment. Nuna. If you keep fighting, that generous man will get hurt. The tiny whale finally arrived at the island. Tunka instantly flinched. That puny whale is talking. That comment made the humpback whale start to frown and glare at Tunka. A beautiful voice then followed it. You called my little brother puny. Tunka became even more shocked as he shouted. This one can talk as well. It was a total mess. Kale could see Tunka's shoulders moving up and down in excitement. Oh ho, you must be beast people. Beast people. This is going to be fun. Tunka was no longer laughing out loud. However, the smile on his face showed that he was at the maximum level of excitement. At that moment, Kale could see that the humpback whale glanced over in his direction. He then saw that the whale's eyes started to shake. Kale, the human who was crouching on the ground covered in seawater and boulder dust while looking up at Waitara, the humpback whale beast person. Her heart started to shake as the guardian of the ocean who protects weak creatures. Paston jumped in between the two of them and started to speak. Nuna, I am still alive. Paston. The humpback whale started to scrunch her face. Her eyes started to tear up. Paston looked toward Tunka before quickly moving his fin out of the water and pointing it toward Kale. Splash. Splash. The water splashed along with Paston's movement, and the water droplets hit Kale's face. This, sir, is the person who saved me when I was dying from the mermaid's poison. The large humpback whale's pupils shook. The small whale got as close to the island as possible and checked on Kale. Oh no, you are completely drenched. I'm also sorry about all these boulder dust. I was going to visit you tonight to thank you. Kale brushed the boulder dust off and responded. That's fine. Are you better now? Yes, sir. I am almost fully recovered now thanks to you. The anxious humpback whale's mouth dropped a bit. It was at that moment. You can't get distracted when you are fighting against me. Do you want to die? Tunka jumped up toward the humpback whale beast person, Waitara, and swung his fist. However, his fist could not touch the humpback whale. It was because the whale disappeared. Shhhhhhhhhhhhhhhh. Water vapor filled the area where the humpback whale used to be. A woman stepped onto the island from inside the water vapor. Tap. Tap. The woman who stepped forward with her heels clicking was Waitara in her human form. Nuna. Paston called out to Waitara. Kale was a bit surprised at that moment. This is not just at the level of making elves look like squids. Waitara was what you would call an explosive beauty. She was so extremely beautiful that she would make even elves look like cockroaches. It was to the point that Kale wondered how someone could be so beautiful. Blue hair and blue eyes. If there was a contest for the most beautiful existence in the ocean, it would probably be the person in front of Kale's eyes right now. The black dragon started to speak into Kale's head at that moment. Dragons are even cooler. When a dragon becomes a human, I'm sure they are even more handsome and more beautiful. The human form of dragons is probably the best in the world. Kale completely ignored the black dragon and stepped backward. Forget beautiful and handsome, the humanized whale beast people were still just as strong and violent. Waitara started to speak as Kale was starting to worry. Please do not run away. I will not hurt you. My sister is someone who keeps her word. Paston soon transformed and approached Kale as well. Waitara could see that Paston's pants were ripped around his calves, and she could see the scars underneath. Anger filled her eyes once again. Tunka slowly walked over as well. Stop paying attention to such a useless person. Hurry up and fight me. That's more fun. Kale and Tunka made eye contact at that moment. Tunka started to scoff at Kale. Looks like this punk just goes around saving people. TSK, Kale clicked his tongue at the term, punk. Tunka seems to have thrown away the stupid alias of Bob at this point. This was the real Tunka. Regardless of whether the opponent was a noble or a strong person, he just acted as he pleased. Kale was more used to this version of Tunka. It was because it seemed like the character in the novel had come to life. Of course, Kale still had no intentions of letting this just pass by. He'll only learn after regretting the sale of the magic tower to me in the future. Kale was confident because he knew about what would soon happen, no, what Kale would personally make happen in the future. The alias of Bob. This was actually a great name for an alias. It was because he would be rice for Kale to take in the future. 1. However, the black dragon started to speak into Kale's mind in anger. To rescue someone or to save someone is a glorious deed. It is something to be proud about. And talking bad about someone is mean. This punk is as bad as Venian. How did the black dragon end up like this when dragons were supposed to be creatures that only care about themselves? Kale started to think about what could have made the black dragon change from the normal attitude of a dragon. He then slowly moved his body behind Waitara. He was a bit afraid that Tunka might kill him for being an annoying and weak person. Do not look down on such heroic action. However, Witaira seemed to be angry. Kale also moved away from Witaira after hearing what she had to say. Witaira noticed Kale's actions and calmly started to speak. Thank you very much. I will properly thank you in the future. However, anger was still burning in her eyes. This was the woman who was at the vanguard in the fight against the mermaids. She was not the type to avoid a battle nor even a small provocation. Oh, I like the look in your eyes. Are you finally ready to fight? Tunka started to twitch and lick his lips. He then relaxed his arms and moved his weight toward his front foot. This was Tunka's battle position. Witaira started to smile. You think I would battle with someone like you? That was a mocking smile. She then created a ball of light that seemed to be quite powerful. Witaira opened her right hand. Splayawash. Pillars of water shot up into her palm and a long water whip appeared into her hands. She flicked her whip toward the ocean. This whip, that seemed to be at least a couple of meters in length, cut through the water and caused the water to riot. Witaira stared at Tunka with a chilly gaze as she started to speak. Funny. This is not a battle. She flicked her finger at Tunka as she continued. This is a lesson. You are going to teach me. Ha ha ha. Tunka let out a loud laughter that seemed strong enough to cause an earthquake and looked toward Witaira with an emotionless face. I guess I'll need to rip that mouth of yours off. He then immediately rushed toward Witaira. Once Tunka started to rush toward her, Witaira waved her left hand toward Kale. A water shield surrounded Kale and Paston in order to protect them. Flick. At the same time, the whip in her right hand viciously shot out toward Tunka. Boom. Tunka's fist made contact with the whip. Witaira started to smile. At least it'll be fun to teach you a lesson. Ugh, this is nothing. Witaira moved her whip to wrap around Tunka's body like a snake and lifted him up into the air. Tunka started to smile as he grabbed onto the water whip with his hands. Mwahaha, a battle of strength is my specialty. Tunka broke apart the snake-like whip with his hands. This caused Witaira to raise an eyebrow. However, Tunka was still no match for this future queen of the whales. Witaira lightly flicked her right hand and the whip quickly attacked Tunka's body. The impact made Tunka fly toward the forest. At that moment. What is going on? Amiru Abar, the investigation squad, and the knights appeared in the forest. Tunka was flying toward them. Witaira's eyes grew wide as she urgently shot out a strand of water with her left hand. However, Tunka was moving too fast. Everybody, open up your shields. Amiru determined that it would be impossible to dodge, and immediately ordered the knights to defend. The knights quickly opened up their shields. Tunka saw what they were doing and shouted toward them. Defend properly. My body is very strong, so you may get hurt. Muhahaha. It seemed probable that the knights would get hurt from this collision because they were wearing leather armor. The mixed blood whale beast person Paston was watching all of this when he heard a sigh coming from behind him. Sigh, so annoying. The voice seemed to be both annoyed and calm at the same time. Paston's eyes opened wide as he turned toward the voice. Boom. Tunka crashed into the shields. However, Tunka did not crash into anybody and nobody got hurt. Tunka turned around to see that a holy-looking silver shield had made contact with his back. There were also song wings that gently surrounded him. What the? The shield slowly turned transparent before disappearing. Witaira's strand of water that was coming to create a shield disappeared into the air. She turned around with shock. The disappearing silver shield was connected to that man who had his head down as he let out another sigh. Sigh. Kale looked calm as he brushed back his drenched hair. However, he was frowning with frustration. Instead of a shrimp getting hurt in a fight between whales, the shrimp had to use its powers during the fight. Chapter 56. Currently thinking, 4. Kale felt all the gazes focus on him, and slowly got up. He was cheering Witaira on after watching her send Tunka flying, but he urgently let out his shield because he did not want the knights to get hurt. Because of that, the inside of the shield was created toward Kale instead of the knights. Thankfully, the knights did not get hurt, but he had just ended up unintentionally saving Tunka. Kale seemed calm as he stood up, but his legs were numb from crouching for too long. Ah. Kale frowned as he stood up. He stumbled because his left leg was numb. Young Master Kale. Amiru rushed over with a shocked expression. Paston, who was also shocked, grabbed onto Kale's arm. However, Kale pushed Paston away and stood up straight. Amiru had an urgent expression as she rushed over to Kale. Young Master Kale. You didn't need to use your strength. Why did you do it? Why? It wasn't like Kale wanted to do it. But it would make things complicated if the investigation squad was injured. Thanks to Kale, it was just a small issue, but if Tunka had hurt the Knights of the Territory, things would get much bigger. Kale could not let that happen because Tunka had to return to the Whipper Kingdom at the right time. Otherwise, I would lose out. Amiru inspected Kale with concern and disappointment. And why are you completely drenched like this? Are you okay? You are in recovery right now, what will you do if you catch a cold? Young Master Kale. You really? Amiru's words made Paston and Witira flinch. This was especially true for Witira, who bit down on her lips and inspected Kale as well. She recalled how her tail had drenched Kale earlier, and thought about the expression on his face when he had looked up while crouching earlier. At that moment, Kale started to speak to the three of them. His voice was slow and seemed to be very tired. Isn't it fine since nobody got hurt? His voice lacked any warmth, as if he was frustrated. He definitely was frustrated. His drenched clothes did not feel comfortable, and he wanted to get away from these troublemakers and get some rest now. Paston lowered his head while Witira looked around. She could see the shoreline that she had destroyed just a few moments ago, and bit down on her lips once again. Amiru hesitated for a moment before starting to speak. Young Master Kale, it is really difficult to understand you. Very difficult. Kale just shut up after seeing that a similar situation to the plaza incident was about to happen again. Everything was annoying. Amiru turned away from Kale and looked toward the two whale tribe members. Her gaze toward them was calm, yet angry. And who are you? This was part of the Roan Kingdom, but this was her family's territory. Amiru had no intentions of letting such an incident that happened in the Abar territory go. And Bob? Amiru glared sharply at Tunka, who was blankly standing off to the side. Who are you? None of the three answered Amiru's question. Tunka seemed to be worried about something, while Paston was thinking about what to say. As for Witira, she could only lower her head after seeing what she had done. At that moment, Amiru heard a noise. Achoo! Kale's nose was itchy and made him sneeze. He pushed back the hair that fell on his face before looking up. He didn't care about anything in front of his eyes and ignored all of the gazes that were focused on him before speaking normally. Let's go back first. Nobody could say no to him. Kale explained the entire situation before coming out of Amiru's residence and looking at the three people behind him. Witira, Paston, and Tunka. He then made eye contact with Amiru, who was coming out behind them. She took a look at Kale before sternly speaking to Tunka. You must leave by tomorrow. You should be thankful that all you are getting for punishment is being banished from our territory. Amiru had demanded that Tunka leave her territory by tomorrow. It was because it became blatantly obvious that he was not a fisherman, as well as because he was the cause of the battle. The two of you will receive similar punishment if you cause any more issues within my territory. The whale siblings bowed toward Amiru with calm expressions. Kale observed the two siblings who were hiding that they were related to the Whale King, before turning his head. Young Master Kale, you seem to be catching a cold, so please head on inside. I will. Amiru's gaze became sharp as she turned back to look at Tunka. You return our generosity with such actions. Kale gently started to speak. That is why you are banishing him. Tunka's banishment. That was what Kale had told Amiru to do. Young Master Kale, you really. Amiru had heard from Paston about how Kale had saved his life, as well as how Kale had no fault, but ended up getting dragged into the mess. Young Lady Amiru, it was not much. Kale had a gentle expression on his face. Didn't you ask me if I could defeat Tunka? As usual, Kale just ignored the black dragon. After telling Amiru multiple times that he was okay, Kale turned his gaze toward Tunka. Tunka had been staring at Kale as well. Tunka had a blank expression for a while now. No, it was more of a complicated expression. Ancient power. It was the only type of power that the non-mages, who focused on physical strength, accepted as strength. It was because they considered it a blessing for someone's power to be passed down through generations. Kale was looking at Tunka with no specific emotion. He was a crazy bastard who ended up becoming a hero, but also showed signs of self-destruction in Volume 5. The whales approached Kale, and Witira cautiously asked, "Is it really okay for us to go with you? It's not like you have somewhere to go. I can give you a place to stay for a night." Kale got on the carriage and ordered the whale siblings to follow. He then closed the carriage door and started to think. At least Tunka will be going back to the Whipper Kingdom. Kale, no, Kim Rock-Soo's style was to not create a deep relationship with someone he could not communicate with. This was different than avoiding someone because things could get complicated. Do I need to contact the Crown Prince? How would the Crown Prince react if Kale said they should bring back the honey-filled hive left in the Whipper Kingdom? He could anticipate the Crown Prince's response because they were similar people. The Crown Prince would be very happy. Kale was dreaming of bringing that hive back and living a nice relaxing life in the future. Kale had to greet Deputy Butler Hans, Beacrox, the Vice Captain, the 10 wolf children, An, and Hong once he got back. Hans had originally approached Kale normally before dropping his jaws after seeing the whale siblings. He then quickly caught himself and started to approach Kale again. "Young Master Nim, are you okay? I heard about what happened." "I'm okay." "Oh, and show these two people to a room." Kale pushed the 2 whale siblings to Hans before turning to look at Beacrox. Beacrox, who was dressed flawlessly, as usual, started to frown once he took a look at Kale. Seeing Kale looking like a mess with the boulder dust and dried sea water, Beacrox turned toward Maze and started to speak. "Heat up the water." "Got it." Maze calmly responded before approaching Kale. "Young Master Nim, I heard you were dragged into their battle and almost got hurt." Kale looked toward Maze, as well as the other wolf children who were watching him, and casually answered, "Not at all. There was no chance that I would get hurt." "I understand." The extremely bright and pure wolf children were calm, unlike their usual selves. Kale just brushed it aside and continued to watch the children, who quickly rushed away to heat up the bath water, before looking back at Beacrox. Beacrox started to speak as soon as they made eye contact. "Young Master Nim, please wash up first." Kale could see that Beacrox could not stand Kale's dirtiness, and so he just nodded his head. He tried to head to the bath but a voice called out to him. "Young Master Nim." "What is it?" It was Paston and Witira. Paston was the one who called for him, but Witira was the first to speak. "May we visit you after you have rested for a bit?" The Whale King. As they were his children, these two were pretty much of the same rank as the kingdom's royalty. However, the two of them were hiding the fact that they were related to the Whale King. Honestly speaking, there was no reason to hide it. It wasn't like the humans would know that they were royalty. It was rare to find a person who even knew about the existence of whale people. "Come tomorrow." Kale answered curtly before turning around. He could hear the Black Dragon's voice in his head. The Black Dragon had a lot to say since earlier. "You sneezed. Will you be able to move tonight? Shouldn't you get some rest? Why are you so weak that I have to worry so much?" "Human. It is so frustrating. I'm the one who is frustrated." Kale decided to use the fact that nobody believed that he was completely healthy to his advantage. He told everyone not to come to him tonight because he needed rest, before speaking to the Black Dragon. "Let's go. I'll listen for now." An and Hong sent them off as Kale headed to the Abar Islands with the Black Dragon. Today was the day he needed to extend these whirlpools' lifespans to last for another year. "I do not know why you are doing this when you are not well. This intelligent dragon brain of mine cannot understand." Kale casually responded to the grumblings of a 4-year-old. "It has to be done today. The territory's mages would arrive tomorrow, making it more difficult to move. He had to take care of that puddle water in the whirlpool today." Kale could see that there were still lights on the central island and landed on an island farther away. This was the location of the second strongest whirlpool, well, now the strongest whirlpool. Sigh. He then let out a sigh. "Why is that punk swimming over here? Wait, why is that punk even here? I do not understand." Kale could hear the black dragon's anxious voice. There was nobody on the island that Kale and the black dragon landed on. However, there was someone in the whirlpool in front of the island. It was such a turbulent whirlpool that it was impossible to see the person inside while up in the air. He must really be a lunatic. It was a dark night, as the moon had just finished its cycle. Kale started to think after seeing Tunka, who had jumped into the whirlpool on such a night. Kale wanted to know just what that crazy bastard was thinking. At that moment, Tunka jumped out of the whirlpool and rushed over to the island. I knew it. I knew it. Tunka kept his gaze on Kale as he approached closer. I knew you weren't just an average person. I knew I smelled a strong person nearby. Are you a mage? How did you fly across the sky? Tunka's eyes started to shake after saying the word mage. His plan was to fight Kale if he said that he was a mage, and kill Kale if he was weak. Tunka was someone who thought that mages were a poison to the world. He continued to quickly walk toward Kale. Are you ignoring me because you are a fancy pants mage? Tunka could see Kale letting out a sigh. Kale looked toward him before casually answering. I am thinking. Kale was thinking about how to deal with this stupid fool. Do I put him in place or put him to use? That was what Kale was thinking about. Kale observed Tunka, who seemed to want to rush over and attack him. What are you thinking about that you are ignoring me? Kale finished thinking the moment Tunka said those final words. He then immediately acted. Let's do both. Boom. Ugh. Tunka, who was not prepared, got blown away and landed in the water. A whirlpool was surrounding Tunka's body. What is going on? Tunka, who had a high magic resistance, found it difficult to deal with this wind. The endlessly swirling wind and water from the sea sucked Tunka in like a swamp. Kale created whirlpools in both of his hands as he approached Tunka. Splash. Splash. The sound of Kale stepping into the water could be heard. He then looked down at Tunka, who was sucked into the sea by the sudden attack. No matter how tall someone was, there would always be a chance to look down at them. Mages cannot have ancient powers. Tunka could feel the wind around him disappear as he looked up at Kale. Bob, a warrior like you should understand what I mean, right? A power that was passed down from a human who created that power. Tunka had heard about ancient powers, but this was his first time seeing one in action. He remained silent for a while before finally starting to speak. Then you are not a mage? Correct. Tunka asked another question after hearing Kale's stern, yet very clear response. Then how do you know about the non-mage faction? Tunka found this noble in front of him to be weirder the more he ran into him. Yes. He's a weird one. This noble did not care that he was not using formal language with him. He was also someone who worked hard to save others when he was ill. This was also the weirdo who had a scent of a strong person around him, even though he himself was not strong. Someone who continued to reveal unique powers every time he saw him. He was also someone who tried to save him. This was Tunka's first time seeing such a person. However, Kale's continued words shocked Tunka once more. Kale did not answer Tunka's question. Instead, he asked a question of his own. Do you have any thoughts about destroying the magic tower? What? What did you say? Tunka's eyes opened widely in shock. His expression seemed to be asking how Kale knew about it. Destroying the magic tower. That was one of the goals of the non-mage faction from the beginning. Kale continued to speak. If you plan to do so, please do not destroy it too much. Tunka subconsciously let out his thoughts. Crazy bastard, what are you talking about? But please kick out all of the mages. Tunka could finally make a determination about Kale after hearing what Kale had to say. Kale started to smile while looking at Tunka. The non-mages who win the Civil War lead the Whipper Kingdom to grow before it quickly breaks down. Although natural instincts took down the rationality known as magic, an existence without rationality would be no better than an animal. Kale's plan was to take control of the benefits that those animals will end up missing. I plan to purchase that magic tower. What do you think? Tunka started to smile as he looked up at Kale. What a crazy bastard. Tunka had made up his mind about Kale. Chapter 57. Currently thinking, 5. Kale responded to Tunka's words by pointing at Tunka and starting to speak. Are you and your crew not also crazy for trying to flip everything over? Tunka's smile ended up turning into laughter. Ha 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 dash. It was so loud that it echoed around the islands. Tunka finally stopped laughing after a while and started to shake his head as he responded to Kale. No. Not at all. Tunka's gaze was cold as he stopped laughing and glared at Kale. We are not crazy at all. Kale knew that Tunka would respond like that. Tunka was certain that the non-mages were the right choice for the future of the Whipper Kingdom. He was going to prove it with results. Of course. I am the same. Tunka slowly observed Kale, who was saying that he was also not crazy. After observing Kale for a while, he finally started to speak. Personally come to buy it. Tunka did not say that he could not destroy the magic tower or that he had no plans on destroying it. That was always the plan. Kale did not think that Tunka's subordinates would say anything about Tunka making the decision on his own for Kale to come to purchase the magic tower. The Whipper Kingdom was the greatest source of magic devices in the Western continent. That meant that it wouldn't be wrong to say that the kingdom's money came from the mages and the magic devices. Money would be the biggest issue once the non-mage faction won the civil war. Furthermore, they desired to get rid of any and all traces of magic in the Whipper Kingdom. Kale was aiming for that moment. The Crown Prince will like it for a different reason though. The magic tower that Tunka and crew would think had nothing left inside would actually hold the treasure that the non-mages were dying to obtain. But how did you know that I was part of the non-mage faction? Sigh. Kale let out another long sigh at Tunka's question. That made Tunka flinch, and Kale did not miss that moment to answer. You are someone from the Whipper Kingdom that is currently on the brink of a civil war. You then looked like you would kill me if I said I was a mage. Who wouldn't think of the non-mage faction? I guess. Kale just turned away from Tunka after hearing his response. Kale was thinking about how Tunka could be so stupid in general yet so sharp and naturally intelligent in battle. However, Tunka seemed to have become even more interested, as he approached Kale. Why are you coming here? Tunka did not stop at Kale's blunt question. Seems like you're about to do something fun. I want to watch. He really had stupidly great instincts. Kale waved his hand. Just go over there and play with the whirlpool. I'm busy. Are you really a noble? Tunka continued to be amazed to Kale. Tunka thought that the noble named Amiru was quite relaxed for a noble, but it was nothing compared to this punk in front of him right now. Talking so informally to a noble would usually lead to a lot of trouble, but Tunka could not help but speak informally to the noble in front of him. I am indeed a noble. Just like you are a warrior. Kale casually responded and looked around. There was a lot that he needed to do today. At the same time, he heard Tunka's voice coming from behind him. Interesting. Kale just frowned and pretended to not hear Tunka. He then released his silver shield. The silver wings appeared alongside the shield and lightly fluttered. At that moment, the black dragon's voice rang in Kale's head. I am very sharp. Kale's body started to float. The black dragon had used its magic right on cue. Kale decided to take care of the other whirlpools first. Bob. Kale called out Tunka's alias. Bob was still Tunka's official name for everyone right now. What? You know all this is a secret, right? Of course. I prefer to keep all the fun things to myself. The smirking Tunka really seemed to be crazy. His physique, hair, and smile all made him look even scarier because it was dark. Kale floated up into the air and started to speak. I will find a ship and crew for you. Don't you need to quickly return home? Oh. Thanks. Kale waved his hand toward the confused Tunka and headed up into the clouds. Win. You can do it. That was the only way for Kale to benefit from it. Kale turned toward an island with another whirlpool. At that moment, he could hear Tunka's loud laughter. It was louder than ever before. Ha 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 ha. Was that bastard always so full of laughter? Kale wondered as he headed to another island. Tunka watched Kale fly away for a while before thinking that the whirlpools were no longer fun, and returning to his residence. However, Kale had no way to know about what Tunka did. Instead, he started to speak to the black dragon. Do you know when I am the angriest? When? The black dragon could see a relaxed smile on Kale's face. When I throw something away for cheap because I think it is trash, yet it ends up being gold. Especially when I really need that gold. The corner of the black dragon's lips started to twitch. I learned something good. No. There's more. More. Yes. Kale leisurely continued. It is even worse when I need to pay even more than it's worth to buy that gold back. That would suck. Kale responded with a villainous smile and started to take care of what he needed to do. He landed on the next island. There is no one here. Kale put both palms down on the ground once the black dragon confirmed that no one was here. Boom. Kale could feel his heart beating wildly. The vitality of the heart really did strengthen the sound of the wind. Kale could feel the strength of the wind rushing up from his feet to his palms. It took less than 1 second for that to happen. Sweeyish. The winds were roaring in both of Kale's palms. Kale then combined the two whirlwinds into one. Sizzle. The two whirlwinds combined with a sizzling noise and started to generate heat. However, because they shared the same master, they eventually became one and became a much bigger whirlwind orb. Kale then floated that orb up into the air. Boom. He then slammed down on the orb with the indestructible shield. The wind orb shot down into the whirlpool underneath the water. Sweet-ish. The wind orb and the wind top inside the whirlpool started to mix together. Kale looked away from the whirlpool as he floated back up with the black dragon's magic. The top would now last at least 6 months. Kale would be able to feel it if it disappeared in less than a year, and would determine what to do at that point. Let's go to the next island. The black dragon's wings fluttered as he increased his speed. Kale continued to throw wind orbs into the whirlpools before moving to gather up the fateful encounter puddle water. The next day, Kale was at the port early in the morning. Bob. He introduced Tunka to the ship and the crew. Tunka stared at them for a while before starting to speak. Come after 2 months. The world will be different. Kale started to think that he must absolutely not go to the Whipper Kingdom in the next 2 months. He could see the excitement in Tunka's eyes and knew that he was going to run wild. Hurry back home. Kale slowly moved away from Tunka and looked toward the crew to urge them to leave. Tunka watched Kale and hesitated for a bit before finally deciding to ask. Are you weak? Yes. Tunka seemed extremely confused after hearing Kale's sharp and clear answer. However, he then stepped onto the ship. Make sure you come after 2 months. Yeah. Kale casually waved at Tunka and then turned away from the ship. At that moment, Tunka shouted loudly from behind Kale. My name is Tunka. Don't forget it. Kale turned back around. The mid-sized ship was leaving the port with the sun shining down on it brightly while Tunka was waving at him from the deck. It felt like a scene out of an anime when the main character was leaving. Kale thought he saw something he shouldn't have seen and turned back around without any regrets. Kale continued to hear Tunka shout for Kale to not forget his name, but Kale made sure not to turn back. But he was feeling full just thinking about what would happen 2 months later. He would be able to earn enough money to spend for a lifetime and get a way to build a strong castle as well. Kale returned to the residence to greet the others. He started to pet the kittens, On and Hong, who had been hiding inside the residence since they got here, as he started to speak. You didn't need to come to see me. I needed to come to thank you as well as to apologize for scaring you. On and Hong dropped their jaws as they blankly stared at Watira. These kittens, who did not even have much reaction when they saw Paston, had a completely different reaction to Watira. Watira checked Kale's expression as she cautiously asked. Are you feeling okay, young Master Kale? Same as usual. Kale was always at 100% thanks to the vitality of the heart. It allowed him to feel perfectly fine, even after sleeping for only 1 or 2 hours. He then started to speak to Watira, who had suddenly stopped talking, as well as her younger brother Paston next to her. That's enough thanks. If you thank me any more, it will not feel genuine. Same thing with the apology. Got it. Thank you very much. 1. Kale blankly stared at Watira, who was speaking formally to him but observed her at the same time. The bloodline of the Whale King. This was different from the chief of any other beast tribe, because the Whale King was the person who ruled half of the ocean. That made the Whale King no less than the king of a kingdom. However, Witira was speaking formally and respectfully to Kale. She had not done so to Choi Han in the novel. Why is she hiding her identity, even though she revealed the fact that she is part of the Whale tribe? However, Kale did not reveal the question on his mind out loud. Kale was trying to hide the fact that he knew quite a bit about the Whale tribe. You just thanked me again. I said no more. Kale continued to speak to the two siblings who seemed to be straight out of a piece of art. I'm glad you siblings got to meet back up. You can go now. He had sent Tunka back already and wanted to meet with the Abar territory's head before heading back to the Henadis territory. Of course, there was stuff for him to complete back home, but he would at least be able to rest until he went up to the Whipper Kingdom. It was at that moment. Excuse me, young Master Kalenim. Witira's voice, and the voice of the Whale tribe in general, was as beautiful as the legendary siren, the dangerous beings that lured people to jump into the sea with their beautiful voice. Kale started to get the chills thinking about that legendary existence. He slowly turned his head to look at Witira. He had an odd feeling in his mind as he did so. We have a very old enemy. I'm sure you already know because you healed Paston. It is the mermaids. I know. I know very well. However, my brother Paston was able to figure out how they were able to suddenly get stronger. What the hell is she talking about? Kale started to frown as Paston added on. The reason the mermaids were chasing after me was because I found the source of their sudden increase in strength. The mixed-blood whale Paston who was killed while being chased by the mermaids. There was a reason he was being chased, and the information he had was very important for the war between the mermaids and the whales. I heard that young master is from the Henadis family. And Witira and Paston did not respond right away and exchanged glances with each other. That action made Kale even iffier. Witira finally turned toward Kale and started to speak. The Forest of Darkness. I wish to go there. No, I must go there. Kale subconsciously answered after hearing something he had never expected to hear. Our territory. The Forest of Darkness. That was the place that Choi Han had lived for tens of years, as well as one of the Western continent's 5 most dangerous and mysterious locations. It was also the place that the Henadis family had kept under control for the kingdom for a very long time. I beg you. We have prepared a large compensation for you as well. May we please go with you? The large and small whales both looked at him with sincerity. An and Hong tapped Kale's knee with their front paws. It was their way of asking Kale to take the whales with them. At the same time, there was a knock on the door before it opened. It was the wolf child, Maze. Young Master Nim, here is your tea and snack. 2 other wolf children came in with a tray and teapot. Beacrox was outside the door guiding them. I am much more handsome and beautiful. Kale heard the black dragons mumbling before closing his eyes. He felt like he was standing in the middle of a chaotic whirlpool. Young Master Nim. Kale raised his hand at Witira's cautious question, which made Witira stop talking. Once the wolf children left and the room became quiet once again, Kale slowly opened his eyes back. He looked very calm with his back to the couch, as he sat there with his messy yet cool-looking red hair. However, in comparison, Kale's dark brown pupils looked so deep that you could not see the end. Witira and Paston were looking into Kale's eyes when they heard his calm voice. First, explain everything to me. Chapter 58. Currently thinking, 6. We have had many battles, both large and small, with the mermaids over the years. We control the north and the mermaids control the south. Paston looked toward Kale. Kale, who was leaning on the couch, motioned to Paston with his chin to continue with his story. An and Hong peeked at Kale's face before slowly moving away from Kale's knee and heading toward the corner of the room next to the black dragon. We are fighting to prevent the mermaids from creating a kingdom throughout the entire ocean. However, something changed 6 months ago. Paston's eyes started to fall. The mermaids started acting weird. Weird. Kale started to think about the novel's information regarding the mermaids. They crossed over the implicit border between our 2 tribes and started to provoke us. This was something Kale knew about. The mermaids start to provoke the whales so that they could take control of the ocean. Kale started to feel relieved after hearing information he already knew about. Paston continued to speak. I was able to figure out the reason behind it. I'm sure it is because they want to create their kingdom. The whale tribe in volumes 4 and 5 knew about the mermaids' plan, and that was why Choi Han was helping them fight against the mermaids. They are trying to take control of the sea route that connects the eastern and western continents. What? Kale sat up straight and looked toward Paston before asking. Isn't the sea route something for the humans? There were a couple different sea routes that connect the western and eastern continents. The humans had found these routes, but they were far and dangerous, preventing an official route from becoming created. According to the novel, there was an implicit agreement between the lifeforms living in the water and the lifeforms living above water. The sea lifeforms would not touch these sea routes and the land lifeforms would not meddle in the issues of the sea in exchange. That was why Choi Han was troubled on whether to involve himself in the battles between the whales and the mermaids. But the mermaids were going to break this agreement. Witira started to speak. At first, we thought that the new king of the mermaids was leading the charge to create their kingdom, but the information Paston brought back was different. Sigh. Kale let out a sigh and took a sip of his now lukewarm tea. I learned something I shouldn't have learned again. The problem was that it was an even bigger issue than all of the other information he had learned up until now. It was even bigger than the issue with the Crown Prince Elberu. And there was one more weird thing. Hold on. Kale prevented Witira from continuing by interrupting her. Just tell me why the Forest of Darkness is involved. Kale felt like he would become involved in something big if he heard anything else. He was starting to feel uncomfortable. Kale could see Witira slightly smiling. Why did the smile of this beautiful whale look so scary to Kale? Yes. This is regarding that. Witira brightly answered while Kale's expression turned darker. As we mentioned, the mermaids became stronger about 1 or 2 months ago. We were able to figure out the ingredient that caused this to happen. Kale closed his eyes. He slowly opened them back and asked the 2 whales. That ingredient is in the Forest of Darkness. Correct. You realized it right away. What the hell was going on? How could something from land in the Forest of Darkness make a sea life form stronger? Kale was shocked. More importantly, how did the mermaids reach the Forest of Darkness? Kale had an iffy feeling about this. Paston's eyes were sparkling as he decisively continued. I heard them talking about a swamp in the Forest of Darkness. That was why I was chased by them. We need to go to the swamp and figure out what the ingredient is. Kale did not need to hear anything else. The Forest of Darkness. Choi Han's Harris village. Kale thought about the 10 wolf children, who were probably outside the door right now, before turning to look at the corner of the room. An and Hong were there with an odd gap between the 2 of them. The invisible black dragon was probably between them. Human, what are you looking at? I was thinking about building him a villa. Is it because you think I am the coolest? Fine, I will give you permission to keep looking at me. It's complicated. Excuse me. The whale siblings' pupils grew larger. However, Kale did not look at them as he started to think. What would be the benefit? In order to figure out what the benefits would be, there was something he needed to understand first. Humans cannot interfere in the events of the sea. Witira immediately responded. We know that is the case. However, we plan on making sure you are not at a disadvantage in any way from this. Everything will be done by us in secret. She then added on to respond to Kale's statement. Furthermore, the mermaids broke the agreement first. They would have needed help from the land in order to reach the Forest of Darkness. But there is still a huge chance of danger. You know that, right? Yes. Next came the second thing he needed to know. So what is in it for me? Kale informed them about the danger first before asking about this. A thick smile formed on Witira's face as she slowly started to speak. Kale knew what was going to come out of her mouth. It would be the same condition the Whale King had offered Choi Han in the novel. A sea route. Kale started to smile. There is a sea route that the mermaids have prioritized in their takeover. It is one that the humans have not found yet. It is the safest sea route available. Kale asked, even though he already knew. Where is it? Witira, who did not know Kale knew about it, confidently answered. Our ocean. The western continent's northern sea. It is in the whale tribe's territory. Kale started to laugh as he asked. Isn't the whale territory the most dangerous? It is the location of the ocean's strongest life forms. But it is a safe place for you now, young Master Kale. You will be given the rights to use that route. Kale casually asked the confident Witira. But I don't need it. Excuse me. Kale had absolutely no need for a sea route like that. It wasn't like they were giving him the sea route. They were just giving him the rights to use it. Kale did not need that sea route in order to live peacefully. However, let me add one more condition. The sea route will make his family wealthier and stronger. Of course, Basin will have to work even harder as the head of the territory, but that didn't matter to Kale. Kale could see the confusion in Witira's face, and answered the future whale queen. Lend me your strength when I need it. Our strength. Yes, strength. 2 times. Nothing else mattered to Kale other than keeping this northeastern territory safe when the northern knights headed down toward this warm and plentiful part of the continent. The whirlpools in the Abar Sea and the naval base, why else would Kale have involved himself in all of this? It was because Kale was preparing for the future based on his knowledge of the novel. We can't interfere with the issues of the land. Kale looked at Witira's pale expression before casually adding on. So you want me to put myself in danger, but you won't do the same. We are a peace-seeking tribe. I don't think you can say that when you have been fighting with the mermaids for so long. The whale tribe was feeling danger from the stronger mermaids. They had never felt such danger before. They probably wanted to completely get rid of that source of danger in order to maintain their peace. Kale continued to speak to the silent Witira. The Forest of Darkness is one of the most dangerous and mysterious areas in the world. It is not somewhere you will have safe travels just because you are strong. Especially for someone like you, who does not know much about the land. Kale was planning on heading to Harris Village anyways. I will help you. The Forest of Darkness that Choi Han had lived in for tens of years. Choi Han did not know everything about the Forest of Darkness, even after spending that long in there. He just knew bits and pieces of it. And the human who knew the most about the Forest of Darkness after Choi Han was, of course, Kale. I think I know which swamp it is. Witira could see Kale smile as he gently answered. Doesn't the whale tribe want a peaceful life as the strongest life form in the ocean? Kale could see Witira's point of view starting to change. She was slowly changing from a position of request to a position of making a deal. You are right, young Master Kale. The whales that wanted peace. That was only possible because they were strong. The whale tribe in the novel did anything and everything to fight the mermaids. I, Witira, as the successor of the whale chief, accept your conditions. Witira could see that Kale was still calm after she revealed her identity. You were the successor? Great. We can finalize our deal without delay. He just seemed happy that they could complete the deal right then and there. He reached his hand out as he asked. Am I supposed to speak formally to you now? There is no need to do that, young Master Kale. I need to hide my identity. Only I should know about it. Correct. Kale shook hands with Witira. That was enough. Kale plopped down on the couch once the whale siblings left. He then looked up at the ceiling and started to speak. Hey you. The black dragon appeared and grudgingly responded. Do not call me, you. Then what should I call you? Kale could see the black dragon land on the other side of the couch and scrunch his nose. You figure it out, human. Shouldn't you first start calling me Kale instead of human? Kale watched the black dragon with curiosity in his eyes as it snorted and avoided answering Kale's question. However, he still said what he was planning on telling the dragon. Don't you want a house of your own? Kale had been thinking about this for a while. If he was going to live with this black dragon, wouldn't it be great to give this greatest life form in the world a fitting house? A house. The dragon's wings started to flutter. Normally, dragons had a strong desire for independence. Although this one seemed a bit different, that desire should still be there. Kale casually nodded his head at the dragon's question. However, the black dragon's response was weird. Are you kicking me out? The black dragon's wings were shaking and the mana in the area was starting to go wild. He seemed to be very angry. Kale immediately started to speak. It's more of a villa. A villa. Yes. Somewhere that you, me, Hong, and the wolves will go visit and have fun. Of course, some of that fun would involve clearing the monsters in the forest of darkness. The black dragon stopped shaking his wings and comfortably laid down on the couch as he responded. I will pick the location of villa. The black dragon's eyes, that were slowly blinking like he was sleepy, suddenly became sharp as he looked toward Kale. In return, you will pick my name for me. You have 1 month to figure it out. The black dragon did not care about the flabbergasted look on Kale's face, and closed his eyes to take a nap. The black dragon had a satisfied smile on his face. Kale turned his head after hearing some snickers to see On, and Hong immediately stopped snickering, acting like nothing was going on, and asked Kale a question. When are we going home? I like fish, but I don't like the sea. Kale answered the kittens. Soon. 2 days later, Kale got on the carriage with Amiru and the others seeing him out. The carriage started to speed up, and Kale closed the carriage curtains as he started to speak. You can turn it off now. The whale siblings appeared after they turned the invisibility magic device off. The black dragon also revealed himself. Seeing the black dragon made Paston flinch and Watira's pupils dilate. The black dragon put his head on Kale's leg and blankly looked toward the whale siblings. What are you looking at? That fluctuation of mana back then. That was you. The black dragon and Watira stared at each other. The two of them was recognizing each other's strength. They also wanted to see how strong the other really was. At that moment. Pat. Kale's hand landed on the black dragon's head. Let's go home quietly. Kale calmly stated, and the black dragon quietly closed his eyes and went to sleep. The carriage immediately turned quiet. A few days later, Kale arrived back at Rain City in the Henitus territory, and immediately started to frown. 1. Young Master Kale Nim. Oh. How did the information from the capital reach here? Kale was looking at the people cheering at him and his group with a complicated expression. Did they forget about how he was trash? Of course, there were still people who immediately froze or ran away as soon as they saw his carriage. However, a new title was now associated with Kale. Young Master Silver Light. Young Master Shield Nim. Shield. Kale started to frown again. He wanted to know if there was a way for him to avoid those cheesy nicknames. The vice captain then appeared within his line of sight. The vice captain, who was on a horse protecting the carriage, was proudly puffing up his chest with pride and started to speak as soon as he made eye contact with Kale. Young Master, your heroic deeds have spread. Ha ha. He slowly guided the horse close to the carriage and continued to speak. I think the name of Young Master Silver Light is very cool. I am jealous, Young Master. Slam. Kale slammed the carriage window closed in the vice captain's face. Kale did not care that the whale siblings were looking at him with curiosity as he closed his eyes and crossed his arms. At that moment, the black dragon lightly tapped on Kale's knee with his paw. Kale slightly opened his eyes and looked down. The black dragon saw the expression on Kale's face and cautiously asked. Are we home? Kale answered with disinterest. Yes. We are home. On and Hong started to stretch and the black dragon fluttered his wings. At that moment, Kale could hear the vice captain's voice through the closed window. Young Master. No need to be embarrassed. Ooh, Young Master Silver Light. Kale could hear the vice captain as well as someone cheering for him. That damn punk. Kale did not open his eyes again until they arrived at the Henitus estate. The trash who had left for the capital had returned home for a moment. Chapter 59. Just destroy it. 1. Kale's family was naturally the first to greet him back home. Swish. Swoosh. Kale's body was turned to the left and right against his will. Tap. 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 Kale's shoulders, arms, face, and both hands were thoroughly inspected. Kale just had a blank expression during the entire process. Looks like you don't have any serious injuries. Count de Ruth inspected Kale for a long time before finally smiling in relief. Kale put on a soulless smile and fixed up his messed up sleeves. Count de Ruth was still strong because he still practiced with his sword every morning. How is your condition? Are you tired? I am fine. Once Count de Ruth was finished, Countess Violin approached Kale. I heard you have more people with you now. She was talking about the wolf children and the whale siblings. The whale siblings currently looked completely different thanks to the black dragon's magic. Yes, it somehow ended up that way. Okay. Kale could see the still flawless Violin's eyes turning chilly. 1. I heard they still have not caught the terrorists. That is what I have heard as well. All right. That'll do for now. Violin's gaze turned to Count de Ruth, who also looked back at her as they exchanged messages through their eyes. Kale wondered what they might be conveying, but pretended not to know of their silent conversation. Their gazes looked like they were going to do something big. Count de Ruth started to smile gently as he started to speak to Kale. We can hear about the incident at the capital and your ancient power later, so go rest for now. Yes, Daddy. 2. Kale could finally head to his room at the Count's suggestion. However, there were more people holding him back. They were his younger siblings, Basin and Lily. Hyungnim, how are you feel? Ah, right. Kale turned away from his siblings and motioned to Deputy Butler Hans. Hans immediately approached them. Here you go. Good. Kale handed the items he took from Hans to Basin and Lily. Fountain pen for you, and a sword for you. Kale had not forgotten about the items his siblings had asked him to get. He handed them their presents and looked at them before asking. What's wrong? Basin's face was stiff. I'm sure it was chaotic. I still had to keep my promise. Basin listened to Kale's emotionless response and stared at him before clenching onto the box with the fountain pen and starting to speak. I will study very hard. I will work for this territory's administration and development. Good, good. You have to be the next count, so it will be great for you to study administration. It was a great mindset in Kale's opinion. Kale started to smile while Basin hesitated for a moment before adding on. I will not do anything that will trouble you. What do you mean? Nothing, don't worry about it. Basin did not say anything else after that. Kale looked toward Basin with curiosity before eventually turning away to look at his youngest sister, Lily Hennetus. The expression on this little 7-year-old's face was oddly determined. Now what? Eldest brother. Lily. I will become strong enough to lead our Knights Brigade and protect our territory. I will protect everyone. Oh, I will be cheering you on. Basin with administration and Lily with the Knights. The two of them will make the territory run properly. How great would this be for Kale? Kale caressed Lily's head with a satisfied expression. You will make an awesome knight. Thank you. I will make it so nobody has to get hurt. Good, good. Kale stopped caressing her head and started to walk. I need to go get some rest now. Hyungnim, please rest well. You must rest well in order to get better. Kale waved at the two children and headed toward his room. The two siblings watched Kale walk away for a long time. Kale had returned to his room for the first time in a long time, but his room did not feel like it had been empty for a while. Meow. Meow. The two kittens rolling around on the bed seemed to be very excited, but Kale could not even put those kittens in his eyes, as he saw who was waiting for him outside his bedroom and started to frown. You're going to be the one serving me. It was Chef Beecrox. Was he trying to stop his duty as the second chef and do Ron's job? Beecrox ignored Kale's questioning gaze and handed him a letter. It is a letter from my father. Ah, Ron. He told me it was a report. Kale could see that the letter was not open. Although Ron had sent a letter through Hans when he had left, it seemed like he was now going to make his reports through his son. Great. Thanks. Yes, sir. I set it up so Maze and the rest of the wolf children will help out with the kitchen and serving. Beecrox's shoulders flinched, but he managed to answer after a few seconds of silence. I understand. He seemed to be very weak while walking away, but Beecrox was doing a good job with the wolf children so far. Click. Kale closed the bedroom door and the black dragon immediately appeared. Our house is great. Our house is very, very great. The black dragon jumped onto the bed with On and Hong in excitement. Kale snickered at the actions of the three children, whose average age was only 7 years old, and leisurely opened up the letter. He then almost dropped the letter. The report had only a single line. How could there be such a scary report? However, it let Kale know that it was actually sent from Ron. Well, the writing and the seal they agreed upon before Ron had left also supported that it was from Ron. Knock knock knock. Young master, may I enter? Kale heard Hans's voice along with the knock. The kittens calmed down while the black dragon immediately turned invisible. Enter. Hans entered with his arm full of snacks for the kittens as he started to speak. The mage said it is fine to visit at any time. Then I'll go now. You don't need to follow. Kale left Hans in the room as he left to head to the administrative building. Where are you going? To meet with a mage? Kale slightly nodded his head for the black dragon who followed him instead of staying back to play with On and Hong. Kale was certain that the dragon got interested in the word, mage. Young Master Nim, welcome back. Thanks. There were many people greeting Kale once he entered. Hello, young Master Nim. Oh, long time no see. I heard you did something big. You are so amazing. Not really. Kale found it to be annoying and sped up. The invisible black dragon observed everyone before starting to flap his wings a little stronger and following after Kale. The black dragon's ears flickered more and his smile became bigger as more and more people appeared to greet Kale. Kale did not know any of this as he opened the door to his destination. Of course, he knocked. Young Master Nim. I haven't seen you before. Nice to meet you. It is my honor. This was the mage responsible for the territory's magic video communication. The video communication was usually handled by someone between the beginner and intermediate level. Can we connect right now? Of course. Where shall I connect you to? The mage continued to peek at Kale as he prepared the video communication device. The territory was currently filled with stories about Kale Henitus. Maybe that was why, but the mage couldn't help but be curious about who Kale wanted to contact as soon as he got home. Kale did not know about the mage's curiosity, as he casually answered. The palace. Ah, the palace. Yes. Kale added on to specify a bit more. Connect me to His Highness, the Crown Prince. Kale saw the hesitating mage, and lightly started to frown. Why? Is it not possible? Then can I just leave a voice message? Ah, no. It is possible. Of course it is possible. Since the palace received so many video communications, it was possible to leave behind a video or voice message, since it might not be possible for the palace to accept all requests due to the sheer number of requests. This world is quite comfortable, other than the fact that you need mages for things every so often. The mage seemed to be flustered as he set the device to the palace and reported to Kale. It looks like it will be difficult to connect right now, but you should be able to leave a voice message for His Highness. Kale preferred to talk face to face, but it wasn't really necessary. Kale nodded his head and the mage started the device before heading out of the room. Once Kale was certain that the mage was out of the room, he started to speak toward the device. Your Highness, it is Kale Henitus. He got straight to the point as usual. I plan on buying the Whipper Kingdom's magic tower. The first use of the golden plaque. Kale imagined the look on the Crown Prince's face once he heard this message. Kale also knew that Alberu had no choice but to approve. Alberu might act flustered and annoyed, but he would actually like what Kale was doing. He would also be curious. That was why Kale added on another sentence. For your information, I will not be able to communicate via video or voice communication for a week. I need to head somewhere for a bit. I just wanted to let you know in advance. Kale then pressed the button the mage told him to press once he was done. A blue light appeared on the device to signal that the voice message was left. He then called the mage back in and the mage looked at the light before starting to speak. It looks like the message was left properly. Good. The mage saw the smile on Kale's face and decided to speak. It looks like you left a pretty happy message. Well, I guess so. The Crown Prince would probably hear the message tomorrow. Kale was smiling about how the Crown Prince would be waiting a week for his return. I feel bad for the Crown Prince. The black dragon suddenly started to feel bad for the crown prince. Kale ignored the comment and headed out of the communication room before heading toward the estate to look for Count de Ruth. He wanted to take care of everything at once while he was here. You want to go to Harris Village? Yes. Kale nodded his head at Count de Ruth's question. He had told his father about both the ancient power and Harris Village. However, Count de Ruth was focused on Harris Village. De Ruth looked down at the Harris Village incident report in Kale's hands before looking up at his son. Kale's gaze looked serious. He really meant it. Harris Village. Count de Ruth had headed over after hearing the report from the investigation squad. He felt anger and sorrow once he saw what had happened. The village really was completely destroyed, and there were no signs of the perpetrators. That was why he had asked for cooperation from the nearby territories, as well as reaching out to the Information Guild to keep their ears open for any information. Is it because you are concerned about that young man named Choi Han? Count de Ruth had found signs of a battle at Harris Village. That allowed him to estimate the level of Choi Han's strength. There was no way that his son, who had spent a longer time with Choi Han, would not know about his strength. I guess you could call it that. Kale nodded at de Ruth's words. That was the only excuse he could give anyways. He could not say that he wanted to go there for the wolf children's berserk transformation and wild instinct training. He could not say it was for the black dragon's growth. He definitely could not say that he was going to the Forest of Darkness to find a solution to the whale tribe's war against the mermaids. Kale continued on, as he could see that Count de Ruth was contemplating. The investigation squad has already completed their investigation, but I wanted to see it with my own eyes. Plus, I don't even need to worry about the monsters. It is not winter. That is true. The monsters of the Forest of Darkness. There was a large man-made stone wall between Harris Village and the Forest of Darkness. It was to protect against these monsters. 3. There have been no monster attacks in the last 150 years. Maybe people were scared because there are so many stories about how you'll die if you go into the Forest of Darkness, but it was very rare for an actual monster to appear. The problem was that any monsters that actually came out were extremely strong mutant monsters. The Count found the fact that no monsters have appeared in 150 years to be odd, and so he had sent multiple investigation squads, but they could only roam around the Forest of Darkness without actually going in. Finally, Count de Ruth started to speak. There are still soldiers in Harris Village, so it should be safe. He seemed to have made up his mind and continued to speak. You have to take care of the people you have taken in. Kale slowly shook his head. It was an unbelievable misunderstanding. Choi Han is not my subordinate. Have Choi Han as his subordinate. Kale would never do such a thing. De Ruth smiled at his son before nodding his head. Sure. Whatever you say. You are all grown up now. Of course. I am 18 years old. You grew up so fast. All right. You can go now. Kale bowed to his father before turning around to head to the door. He could hear Count de Ruth's voice behind him. Kale. De Ruth continued to speak as Kale turned back around. The golden turtle has not always been our family crest. We are a family of warriors who are sworn to protect our family and anything else. The two of them made eye contact. We protect everything with our strong shell. However, you must remember that the most important thing is to protect yourself. That is why we are a turtle. A turtle that protects itself with its strong shell. Count de Ruth, who was known for being mediocre in all aspects by others, reminded his son once more. That is why you should always remember to put yourself first. He then smiled gently and added on. The ancient power you have earned is very cool. Kale smiled similarly to Count de Ruth, as he jokingly answered. Isn't it? It is a very cool power. Oh, and I always put my own safety first. Good. Then I'm glad. Kale observed de Ruth nod his head and look back down at the report on the desk before heading out of the office. The Black Dragon had a question for him as soon as they left. The two of you are family, right? Kale nodded his head at the question. The next day, Kale got onto the carriage as he started to speak to the whale siblings. Not bad for my new guards. Witira with her whip in her hand and Paston with a sword in his hand, both smiled toward Kale. They were still under the Black Dragon's appearance magic. Kale started to head toward Harris Village, well, the Forest of Darkness, to be more accurate. Chapter 60. Just destroy it, too. Kale got off the carriage once they got to Harris Village, the village closest to the Forest of Darkness. His thoughts once he got there were simple. It's black. It had been a little longer than 2 months, but Harris Village was still dark. Kale looked down toward his feet to see that there were still black ashes on the ground. He then looked back forward and heard the vice captain's bitter voice. Everything burned down. Kale turned around to look at Vice Captain Hillsman. Where did they say the graves were? I will go find out. It had been a while since Kale had seen Vice Captain Hillsman being so calm, but it wasn't Hillsman's fault. A large stone wall. Harris Village, the village located outside of that wall heading into the Forest of Darkness, was no more. All that was left was the crumbling ruins of houses and dark ashes that served as signs that something once existed in this location. I feel a strong sensation of fire here. You can feel something like that. I am from a tribe of the sea after all. Witira lightly smiled and responded, but then she seemed to get emotional. However, Kale did not have time to pay attention to her. He headed over to the wolf children who did not seem to be able to get off the carriage. Maze. Young Master Nim. The eldest wolf, Maze, was stiff after seeing the remains of the village in front of him. Kale was pretty sure that they were currently thinking of their hometown. Do you know why I brought all of you here? Maze could not answer Kale's question. Kale had not told him why he brought all of them here. It was a small group such that even Deputy Butler Hans and Beecrox were not here, but they were included. Maze looked toward Kale with uncertainty. The young master that Locke told them to serve leisurely started to speak with his arms crossed. A lot of money is about to fall into my hands. Excuse me. The sudden talk about money confused Maze and the wolf children. Kale just continued to speak without care. The magic tower and the queen of the jungle. He would have a ton of money after these 2 interactions. He was also going to bring the rights to a peaceful sea route to his territory. And I plan on using some of that money to rebuild this village. The term, village, caught the children's attention. I also plan on building a villa here for all of you, me, and the rest of the group to play together. I heard the Forest of Darkness is dangerous. Are you being serious? Kale questioned Maze and looked around. An and Hong were getting off the carriage and the black dragon was probably flying around somewhere. The whale siblings were approaching a well that was covered in ashes. Will they be stronger than all of you when you grow up? The blunt question reached the wolf children's ears. I promised Locke that I would take good care of all of you. That means I also have to provide a place for you to live like the wolves you are. The moment a smile that seemed to say that it was not hard to accomplish at all appeared on Kale's face, a cold wind passed by them. Once some of the black ashes flew away with the wind, Kale's voice once again filled the void. I will create that place for you. I will help you grow and develop into great wolves before Locke gets back. Kale looked toward Maze and the wolf children and started to frown. No response. Why, yes. Yes. Kale was not satisfied with the children's answer and started to walk away. Maze looked toward Kale, who was walking toward the wall, before turning around. His younger siblings were all looking at him. Maze started to speak. Let's all grow strong. Maze then looked around the village. He was thinking about how this black village would one day become a warm place like the hometown in his mind. Maze could feel that his siblings were feeling the same way, even though they did not say anything. They were all wolves. Kale did not know about the wolves' determinations as he tapped on the stone wall. It's quite thick. Kale turned his head to see the only gate on the wall. This stone gate was the only access point to the Forest of Darkness. Of course, Choi Han did not use this gate when he first arrived at Harris Village. He jumped over the approximately 10-meter-tall wall to enter. Is the Forest of Darkness past this wall? Correct. Kale peeked over to Witira, who had approached him. Her blue hair and pupils were both dyed brown with magic, and her face was also magically changed to an average face. However, her voice was still just as beautiful. I can't see past the wall, but it should be pretty unique seeing as how it is one of the forbidden regions, right? I wonder if the wall is strong. Witira smiled as she lightly pressed onto the wall with her index finger. However, that finger stabbed right into the wall. Ha ha. Witira awkwardly started to laugh. Whales really are a scary race. Kale pretended not to see and turned away. These two long-haired siblings were still not used to controlling their strength on land. Kale quickly changed the topic. It's similar. What is? Past the wall. You said it probably looks unique. Ah. Witira let out a small gasp and Kale just shrugged his shoulders. He turned away from the wall as he continued to speak. The Forest of Darkness is a regular forest, just like any other. Kale saw that Witira had quickly approached him and was walking at the same pace as him and continued. But the thing inside of it is different. Nobody knew the reason why, but the Forest of Darkness often had mutated plants and monsters. It was easy to tell the mutated monsters apart because they looked different, but it was more difficult for the plants. Although they might look similar, a mutated version of an herb used for healing could end up being poisonous. And there are also monsters that are generally found in the eastern continent as well. That was why it was one of the forbidden regions. It was the one place on this continent that they could find traces of the eastern continent. Young Master Nim. Kale nodded toward Vice Captain Hillsman, who had called out to him, before turning back to speak to Witira. Please take care of the children. Of course. There are quite a lot of young beast people. Witira quietly watched Kale, who sighed with an annoyed expression at her statement. Kale then turned around and headed toward Hillsman. Let's go. Yes, sir. Kale only had Hillsman with him as they headed to a certain location. Here it is. Many graves were located here. This was where Choi Han had buried all of the villagers of the Harris village. Hillsman moved away from Kale and went to stand with the soldiers before looking toward Kale. The fact that Kale Henitus came to this village was surprising, but the fact that he looked for the graves as soon as he got off the carriage was even more surprising. The vice captain had moved away to give Kale some alone time. Of course, Kale didn't even realize or care about the vice captain's action and just started to talk to himself. The fact that he didn't go crazy is amazing. The fact that Choi Han remained sane after this incident was amazing. Choi Han seemed to have put a lot of effort into these graves, but they were mostly just made with dirt. In addition, they did not have any gravestones, instead they just had their names written on flat pieces of rock. Kale counted the number of graves. Choi Han had personally buried all of the bodies underneath the graves. Kale had an interesting thought every so often. The reason behind the death of the Harris village villagers that had remained a mystery in the novel. The novel made it sound like it was done for the main character to develop. But was that really it? I feel like there is more to it. He kept having this feeling that there was more to the story these days. The reason was simple. The Forest of Darkness, mermaids, and the destruction of Harris village. These three things gave Kale a scenario. However, this was a problem he would tell Locke to share with Choi Han, or, if Choi Han ended up coming back with Locke, he would pass it off to Choi Han himself. Harris village was not Kale's problem but Choi Han's problem. Hillsman. Yes, young master. So all Kale did was what he needed to do as a member of the Henitus family. Tell them to give them proper graves in the future. This is too shabby. Yes, sir. Kale patted Hillsman, who responded more energetically than usual, on the shoulder before looking toward the soldiers. The soldiers slowly moved back and Kale kept his hand on Hillsman's shoulder and whispered. You know what to do. All sorts of emotions appeared on Hillsman's face as he recalled what had happened 2 nights ago. They were camping out in the when Kale called him over to his tent. I will be going into the Forest of Darkness. What? Why would someone in recovery go somewhere so dangerous? The perpetrators will not be in there. Do you have to do so much for Choi Han? The small black dragon appeared while Hillsman was talking. He was extremely surprised when it had happened. But that was not the end. Meow. The kittens meowed before turning into people. They were beast people. Furthermore, the vice captain felt chills for the first time in his life after seeing the woman pull out a long water whip and the man holding a sword with a whirlpool at its end. Don't worry. At the center of all of these strong monsters was Kale, who had a relaxed smile on his face. The fact that Kale seemed so normal around them made Hillsman even more shocked. Hillsman had made up his mind in the last 2 days. Although he was someone whose only goal was to become captain, he still wasn't an idiot. Yes, I got it, young Master Nim. Good. Kale turned away without any other issues from Hillsman. Hillsman followed right behind Kale, who continued to speak. I trust you. That made Hillsman clench his fists. He had thought that it would be enough if he could make it to the captain position in the Henadus Knights Brigade. However, his mentality had changes in the last 2 days. He shared his thoughts with Kale. Young Master Nim, I will get stronger. Do whatever you want. Kale answered disinterestedly, only feeling relieved that it sounded like Hillsman would take care of the headaches. That was why there were no guards by where Kale was standing in the middle of the night. The vice-captain had changed the patrol areas. Kale touched his magic bag while standing in front of the stone wall and started to speak. There are 2 swamps in the Forest of Darkness. This large forest only had 2 swamps. Kale leisurely continued to speak after making eye contact with Paston. One is where monsters live and the other is where nothing can live. He then asked Paston. Paston, you said it looked like the mermaid's poison got stronger. So then which one do you think it will be? Paston nervously answered. I think it is the one where nothing can live. Correct. There is a high chance it will be that one. That is why we will be heading there first. They could head for the one with the monsters if the first one was not correct. That was actually easier location-wise as well. At that moment, Witira, who had been quietly standing there, looked to Kale's sides with concern. She then hesitated for a bit before finally asking the question. Won't it be dangerous for the children? An and Hong were dangling on Kale's sides. Young Master Kale, you said that the Forest of Darkness is dangerous. And if it is a swamp where nothing can live, it is definitely either that there is poison everywhere or that the swamp itself is dangerous. Witira felt something was odd as she continued to speak. The cat tribe's silver kitten On's tail was happily wagging. A dangerous place like that is our specialty. But more importantly, he said we will not get hurt. The cat tribe was cautious and talented in searches. Witira looked up at Kale because On's response was not what she had expected. Her eyes then turned wide. It was because Kale was smirking and the other cat tribe child, the red kitten, was also smiling. Both of their smiles seemed villainous. Hong seemed to be very excited as he started to speak. I'm going to get stronger today. It'll be fine. It was time to improve the poisonous fog. A safe encounter for the children, who wanted to get stronger, and Kale, who wanted safety and peace, had arrived. Kale started to speak to Witira. It is a great opportunity. A poison fog strong enough to impact even the whale tribe might be completed here if they were lucky.